Good evening. Tonight is November 16th, 2022. This is the Monroe Township Board of Education meeting. We will begin with our Pledge of Allegiance led by our student board members. Please join me as we stand to say the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May we have a roll call, please, Mrs. Tagliaferra?
Ms. Arminio?
I'm here.
Ms. Belko?
Here.
Ms. Bierman?
Here.
Ms. Bora?
Here.
Mr. Chiarella?
Here.
Ms. Fabiano? Mr. Nikotinsky? Ms. Ratner? Ms. Scott?
Here.
Ms. Skirby?
Here.
Madam President, you have a quorum.
Thank you.
In accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law, the Monroe Township Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published, an electronic notice provided by having the date, time, and place thereof posted November 11, 2022, at all schools, on the district website, published in the Home News Tribune, published in the Cranberry Press, and filed with the clerk of the municipality.
Thank you. We'll move on to our approval of our minutes. We have the minutes from the October 19th, 2022 closed session. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Second.
Are there any questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
I oppose.
Uh, Ms. Arminio opposes. Any abstentions, recusals? No? Okay. Our next one is the public minutes from October 19th, 2022. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion. Second.
Okay. Any questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ms. Arminio is opposed. Any abstentions, recusals? No? Okay. That concludes our approval of our minutes. The next item on our agenda is our student board members report. We have both of our student board members here with us. We'll start with Mr. Latapoli. Yes, we can hear you. Yep.
At Barclay Brook, the Barclay Brook Brookside PTA hosted a pumpkin patch for their preschool and kindergarten students. They purchased pumpkins that were placed in the grass outside of the kindergarten classrooms before the day began. Students were so excited to visit the pumpkin patch and selected their very own pumpkin. It was a very fun day for all of them. Barclay Brook also celebrated Halloween on Monday, October 31st, with 2 parades and class parties throughout the entire day. Students enjoyed wearing their costumes and celebrating the day. The Barclay Brookside PTA hosted a book fair in early November. Students were excited to shop the book fair and select books to bring home. Thank you to all of the parents volunteers who made it a success. In honor of Veterans Day, Barclay Brook students participated in an Operation Gratitude where they wrote letters of appreciation to our deployed troops, veterans, new recruits, and first responders. The letter and picture will be mailed to these heroes. The school extends a special thank you to Ms. Drust and Ms. McLeod for organizing this letter writing campaign. At Brookside, the students at Brookside have done an exceptional job. They've earned so many gold and purple tickets for following their school rules and displaying great character. For this month, the students were rewarded with incentives such as playing basketball with Mr. Jacinto before being first in line for lunch or listening to audiobook/podcast with Miss Lynn. They also recognized a student of the month for each grade level for the character trait of respect. A few successful events have occurred over the last month, and they are the Think Pink Day fundraiser for breast cancer awareness. 3rd grade students were able to visit the fire safety house, and a PTA sponsored a trunk or treat. Brookside has also been excited to see so many parents in the building for parent-teacher conferences that took place the week of October 17th and during American Education, which is taking place this week. At the middle school, November 4th, MTMS held their Veterans Appreciation Assembly. Local military veterans were invited in, and each grade attended an assembly to meet them and hear about their military experiences. Dr. Higgins spoke to each grade to introduce, and Ms. Chanley spoke with their students as well to express her gratitude to their guests. November 15th, as a part of American Education Week, MTMS invited parents to come in and visit their children in their classroom settings. November 17th, also as a part of American Education Week, the administration chose the students as recommended by their academic team to shadow them for the day and be acting administrators. November 21st and 22nd will be a half day for students at MTMS, while parent-teacher conferences will be held. And November 30th will be a makeup picture day for any students who needs to make them up. At Woodland, a few keynotes here are on November 18th, there will be student council elections. November 21st, marking period 1 ends. November 23rd, 4-hour sessions for students, half day for students and staff. And November 24th to 25th, of course, school is closed for students and staff. And then November 28th, marking period 1, report cards will be available.
Thank you. Ms. Thacker?
For Oak Tree, at Oak Tree, American Education Week will be from November. All right, is this better? Yep. Okay. At Oak Tree, American Education Week will be from November 14th through 18th, with parents of students in each grade being invited to observe class lessons and activities. On November 18th, the first grade will host its fall festival, where parents are invited to attend and participate. On October 31st, the annual Halloween parade was a great success, and staff dressed as characters from the wonderful world of Disney. On November 22nd, school pictures were held. On November 29th, the first One Book, One School will be held, where Mrs. Dinsmore reads the same story to all classes throughout the day. This year's theme is about emotions and feelings and the tools to identify and regulate them, with the first story being entitled The Color Monster. On December 2nd, Oak Tree will have their first celebration day. If the students earn enough star tickets, they will be rewarded. The annual Thanksgiving food drive is occurring right now by the school's student council. Each grade has been assigned food groups to donate, and there's a competition among the grades. Mill Lake has had a very busy fall. Parents were invited to participate in the parent-teacher conference, where teachers and support staff walk parents through their students' many accomplishments and newly acquired skills. Mid-October marked the annual kindergarten bear hunt, where staff and students engaged in a hunt seeking clues about Mill Lake while practicing socialization skills. Staff members continue to participate in various district professional developments and collaborations, including My View English Language Arts Training, Crisis Management Coaching, and Envision's Math Review. To celebrate, as staff, Mill Lake dressed up as the Mill Lake Beehive, sporting black and yellow wings and decor to honor unity as well as individuality. This included various activities, such as 2 parades, classroom parties, and a very creative Bee Movie musical, which is posted on the Mill Lake website for all to view. The Mill Lake Student Council made sure that they were leaders in the Halloween fun by designing and facilitating Mill Lake's trick-or-treat on the principal and vice principal by asking the student body to suggest a costume for Mrs. Garcia and Mrs. Fedora. Presently, the school is celebrating National Education Week, where parents have been invited to participate in classroom lessons and observe school happenings. On Friday, November 18th, Mrs. Papandrea and Mrs. Pandolfi's class will be hosting a tribute to the veterans, honoring the veterans of American Legion's Post 522. As for Applegarth, on Monday, the 14th, the school participated in the district fundraiser to collect money for GIGO, a charity that assists veterans and active duty personnel. On Friday, the 18th, the school is hosting their own election day. Classes will sign up for a time and be able to enter a booth to cast their vote about this year's motivational tagline at the end of morning announcements. Taglines were suggested by 5th grade students and would be voted on by the entire school. Polling booths will be staffed with student council representatives. On Wednesday the 16th and Thursday the 17th, the school is welcoming families for American education visits. On Friday the 18th, the school will have their PTA-sponsored school store. On Tuesday the 22nd, students will have an assembly by the Great Falloons, entertainers who bring concepts about earth sciences to life for students. Here at the high school, on November 1st, the high school choral program hosted their fall coffee house and showcased many talented voices within the school. On November 28th and December 1st, the high school will offer virtual parent-teacher conferences for an opportunity for parents to receive important feedback on their students. In October, the high school hosted an Honors Academy information night for students looking for career or enrichment opportunities and a rigorous curriculum through the Honors Academy program. Recently in November, the applications for the Academy were due, and the high school looks forward to reviewing applications and welcoming a new class of students to the Academy. Thank you. That's all we have for the report today.
Thank you so much. Our next item on the agenda is a presentation on the budget philosophy. As you know, the budget for our district is very large, and it does take many months of planning and meetings with the administration, with all of their buildings, to come up with this. So this is the first step in that, is presenting to the board the budget philosophy. So Mrs. Chandler?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening. So with no any further ado, I want to first start off by acknowledging, as always, that everything is in collaboration. So although the budget philosophy is something that's presented to you by myself, Dr. Lehman, and Ms. Allen, it is in support, of course, with all the members of the Board of Education. So we thank all of the members that are here this evening, and also those that are unable to be here. So first, I think it's important for the public to be aware of the budget creation timeline. So in order to present a budget that addresses all of the needs of the children and, of course, then the district, we look at a timeline, and we try and stay fairly close to the timeline because we're up against deadlines, as always. And a lot of that is dictated by the state, and some of it comes directly from us. So we have the establishment of the budget philosophy, which we're sharing this evening. We, of course, have the enrollment patterns and projections. Of course, you know, a projection, I don't have to explain what that means, but a pattern is a little bit different. So a pattern might be larger numbers perhaps in one grade over another grade, certain needs all of a sudden, let's say, in the area of a particular special education program, or in the area perhaps of maybe a mathematics class. That's what we meant by patterns. Larger numbers would then might need larger amount of textbooks, are we up for adoption, and so forth. Review of staffing needs is always primary in all of our grades. Budget development, budget defense rounds, governor's budget address, the award of the state aid, adoption of a tentative budget, and of course we have the public hearing, and then of course we have the final adoption. This is not new to you. We just thought it'd be nice for you to be able to see it, so it's outlined. So if anybody had any questions, where do you start, where do you go, that's where it is. We always say we're not going to read to you, but then we read to you because it just becomes habit as human beings. I don't know why to do that. So I'm not going to say I'm not going to read to you. I am going to read to you. So a budget philosophy, basically the philosophy of establishing the annual school budget should entail the creation of a framework for a budget that supports a democratic plan of appropriate funding for the implementation of educational programs so the students may develop and learn from quality experiences based on educationally sound and fiscally prudent planning. So basically, children first. We look at the academics, we look at the rigor, we make sure that it is produced and provided in an appropriate manner, which includes staffing, building, programs, curriculum, textbooks, technology, and fiscally prudent. We realize that we wish the world was our oyster, but it is not, and we have to be responsible to one another, responsible to the public, all of the taxpayers, and of course, ultimately, finding a way to be prudent in our financial expenditures, but at the same time, making sure that we give children what they need. A solid financial base is paramount to ensuring that the school district will be able to meet the responsibility of preparing our students for an increasingly competitive environment. We know that the public is well aware that the competition that's out there for all of our children across the nation, and of course, across all countries, is something that is not going away. It becomes more and more competitive. We bear the responsibility here in Monroe Township to make sure that our children are prepared for their future in that global economy, global environment, as well as here at home in the United States. The budget philosophy stage should be macro-focused rather than micro-focused, as much more refinement will be required and implemented in the future through the rigorous budget process. So what is specifically meant by macro-focused is it's a philosophy of thought. What is our first must-have? What is a continued we'd like to have? What is we'd love to have, but we don't know if it's doable? It's not the micro. What is micro? How many textbooks will be ordering? How many textbooks are up for adoption? How many individual staffing needs do we need in all the buildings? What is an absolute priority if it's a roof or an HVAC or another project of an internal change of a classroom to accommodate a different classroom? That is the micro, and that is not being presented here this evening because this evening is a budget philosophy. Priorities. Student and staff safety first and foremost always. It has to be. We know that in order for children to be in an environment where they want to learn and they're ready to learn, they have to feel safe. There's no other way around it, and that includes the staff as well. So we are a team, and as much as we want to put staff first, we have to make sure that we want to put students first, we want to make sure that we take care of our staff as well, because everybody has to feel safe, and we want our children, our staff healthy, and then of course comes happiness, and that's when the learning occurs. So that's our first priority. We want to maintain current programs and staff. So what does that mean? When appropriate, when fiscally responsible, and when doable, we absolutely want to add programs. We want to add programs. We want to add curriculum changes. We want to give the very best above and beyond when possible. For the staff to be able to be increased, of course that's something we want to do. But our first responsibility is to maintain what we have. We don't want to have to lose anything or cut any programs. And then when possible, we look to see where things can be enriched. And of course, and it's been said many times by the public, and we have Mr. Take here with us this evening, and he does come, and it's important to have him because we are a team and we have to look at capital improvement needs. We are not, as I've heard being in this district for 20 years, and now I am a resident, we are not kicking the can in any way, shape, or form. We are looking at what is a priority and must be done now, what is a capital improvement that cannot wait. We are working to do stopgap procedures, programs, physical changes in the buildings, in addition to putting out the referendum on April 18th. We're not saying we have a referendum coming, we're waiting. We're doing what needs to be done now, and we're continuing to look at, through the budget process, what we must do. Thank you very much. I'm now going to turn it over to Ms. Allen for the numbers selection and section part of this.
Okay, so this slide shows the projected. This slide shows the projected increases or decreases in the 2023-24 budget projected variances in new resources. So it's only the net additional or reduced revenue over the prior year budget. So for the state aid, we try to be conservative and just budget the same that we had in the prior year. We expect an increase, but we don't know what it will be, so we just keep it at the same level. The additional general fund tax levy going to CAP would be an increase of $2.2 million. We have no banked CAP available. Okay. Although we have excess surplus from 21-22, which is subject to change because it's not, the audit is not final yet. The amount of $3.3 million. It is a decrease of just a little over $1 million from the prior year excess surplus of $4.4 million. Excess surplus represents the aggregate difference between the actual and budgeted revenues plus the difference between the actual and budgeted appropriations. It is required that the excess surplus from June 30th of 22 be used as a revenue source in the 23-24 budget. Last year, we were able to include transfers into the general fund from other funds in the amount of $625,000. This year, we are not anticipating any transfers from other funds into the general fund. Although last year also we had, there was something new in the law where for the 2 years, last year and this year, we could, instead of having a 2% excess surplus, it was changed to 4%. So although we have the excess surplus figure in the budget from last year, we also included a transfer from unassigned fund balance in the amount of $2.3 million to bring it to that 2% cap that we normally use. So we have not done this. We have not included that here in this budget philosophy. We have the capability of doing that, but that's taking money from your fund balance to, to use as a revenue source in your budget. So the net projected reduction in the new budget resources is $1.7 million. So it's less than what we had to work with last year. Although we do have if you take the tax levy of $2.2 million and the excess surplus of $3.3 million, you would get the actual increase, the revenues to be budgeted. Okay, if that makes sense. Okay, so the following page just shows the excess surplus over the different years, from 2021 through 23, 24, the change. And again, that is the amount that we have to budget as revenue. And the next page just shows the cap, the tax levy cap revenue, which shows the increase of $2.2 million over the 22-23 budget. We are not anticipating any adjustments to that, but they could happen at, when the budget program comes out. And the next slide would be the general fund state aid revenues, which shows you what we have for 22-23 and what we, as I said, we will keep it the same in this budget for 23-24. We have to consider with salaries and benefits that they are approximately 78% of the general fund budget. So that is a fixed cost, contracted cost. The aggregate 22-23 district salaries are approximately $73.3 million. And the 22-23 health benefit premiums are $29 million and are offset by contractual contributions of almost $4 million by the staff. And that is the financial part. I'm sorry.
I'll just finish off with the last page, and then by all means, any questions anybody may have. So it is the recommendation of the administration that the budget is prepared responsibly, meeting the demands of continuing significant student growth and facility needs, as well as program and service requirements, without exceeding the board's maximum spending authority, while prioritizing the following items subject to the restrictions presented by administration. And I will explain that a little bit in layman terms. Construction projects to be recommended by administration on priority basis, curriculum recommendations to be recommended by administration, salary and benefit increases at a conservative range due to their contingent status, transportation recommendations recommended by administration, programs as recommended by administration, and administration review of non-mandated programs and services with eliminations as a possibility. So as basically explained on the very first, second, or third slide, whatever it might have been, depending on where you look at the presentation, we were talking about timeline. So what we are in the process of doing right now is preliminary budget meetings have occurred. That's through meetings with supervisors, which handles the direct curriculum avenue, then with supervisors and administrators at the levels, the actual building levels. Then we have what we call the budget defense rounds, and we go through all of the wants, needs, and wishes, and we say, what is a must? What is it that we need to have to move forward with the children's safety, well-being, academic needs, social-emotional needs, whatever it might be, and so on and so forth. And then we look at what is a want versus what is a need. Furthermore, we also meet with Mr. Tague on behalf of facilities. We sit down and we meet with food service. We sit down and we meet with security. We meet with transportation and so on and so forth. So every area is covered, which then becomes a comprehensive budget. So as far as the administration is concerned, we know that our responsibility is not only to be prudent and to be fiscally, financially responsible to the public, because it's it's always the public's money, that's what taxes are. We, at the same time, will make an educated decision in consultation with our principals, our supervisors, our directors. This is not Dr. Lehman and myself and Ms. Allen sitting down and saying, this is what we'll be doing, this is what we're spending. It doesn't work that way. We do not micromanage, which is a good thing because we are not in the buildings every day, and we also need to hear from the principals what it is they need to put their children first. And that's basically what this last page says in English. So that does conclude our budget philosophy presentation, and of course, we are all here and available for any questions that you may have.
Does anybody have any questions? Ms. Bora?
I'm not sure if I'm framing it right, but the surplus, excess surplus amount of $3 million, 3.3, which is less than 1.8 almost compared to last year, could that change between now and when this new budget will? Does that ever happen, that the excess surplus amount that is being discussed today between November and June, are there expenses that impact
No.
that surplus ever?
No, that is the amount that is audited as of June 30th, 22. So that's not
Okay.
going to change. That's the amount that we have to include in the budget as a
So
revenue, but
it's a surplus from 21-22 budget,
Yes.
not 22-23.
yes, it's always yeah.
That answers my question,
Yes.
sorry.
I mean, I'm sorry, it's the 21-22 surplus that is
Yes,
budgeted
yes,
in
and I
the
was assuming it to be
23-24
surplus
budget.
of this year's budget, no, so that,
Yeah,
my question is answered.
but again, it could vary only because the audit is not final.
Yeah. Got it.
Anybody else? Mr. Ratner?
Yes, I just have two questions. The first, I know that the health insurance premiums were mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I know that this is very preliminary.
Mm-hmm.
I also know like the state health insurance plan, which we are not part of, is increasing significantly.
Yes.
Do we know approximately if there will be an increase in how much it would be?
We do expect an increase, but we do not know at this point. In fact, we won't really know until probably towards the end of March what that will be. So we have to expect, an increase,
Okay.
a substantial increase probably.
And then my other question, and this is just understanding the process. I know that there are, the budget defense rounds. Are community members or parents and students ever involved in any of those discussions? Or is it only, teachers, administrators, supervisors? Because obviously those are the experts. They're the ones who understand the needs. But I also know that with it being mostly taxpayer funds and also vested, partners in education with parents and community members, I wasn't sure if they are ever part of that discussion.
So the answer is no. However, at any time that a parent, and this has happened in many buildings, anytime a parent has a suggestion, it could be a concern, it could be negative, or it could be something positive, maybe something that they experience in another state, they possibly may be educators, and they want to bring it to the principals, which many of them do. It could be a program that we don't have that would be very, definitely be worthy looking at. That absolutely will come into consideration. But, and children as well. I mean, you see our children. Our children are very comfortable in speaking up, which I think is fantastic in Monroe. So a lot of children will come forward. A lot of the wants of the children, and I'm only speaking from experience at the middle school level, the way they portray the things that they want are usually something that we can easily handle within the current budget. It might be a club, I'm talking middle school, it might be an activity, it might be utilization of a certain type of a program that perhaps one of their friends has in their classroom that could easily be something that could be incorporated to whatever area of the budget, technology, textbooks, reusables, there's all different. There's all different parts of a budget that go into play based upon the fund.
Okay, I can only imagine having those discussions with the middle school students.
Oh, yes.
I'm sure it's exciting. So just to clarify, for chain of communication, I know we're going to change, I think that's what we had discussed. If anyone has suggestions, they should reach out to the building principal or I guess the supervisor if it's a certain program, if they have an idea, like email that to you.
Sure, but I think it makes sense. I mean, if they were doing it via email, they could probably just send an email. So if it happened to be Dr. Roselle, ELA, but I absolutely like the idea of including the building level administrative because perhaps there is a similar program that's already there and that's already being utilized. So I think, more people that you involve is a good thing, and that absolutely would be appropriate. And there are a lot of parents that do that.
And then, Ms. Ratner, when the budget is prepared, then we do bring it here in front of the public, and there's a public hearing. We present it, the public has an opportunity to speak on it, then it goes back, then it comes back again in front of the public for the final adoption by the board. So there is that time period where it's presented to the public, and then they are able to speak. And there have been opportunities for changes, because there have been times, Mr. Chiarella, I know you were on the board, when things were cut out, such as busing. There was paid to participate at one point put in, and the room was filled, standing room only. Parents came out, they spoke out against it. The administration went back, took that out, and took that out of the budget. So the community definitely does have the opportunity to come, review it, and then speak at the hearing, and then ask for any changes that they would like.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely good to know. It's good to know there's that time period where, because otherwise, if you think of it as an initial presentation, if there wasn't that opportunity for change, then, discussing that could be a moot point. So it's good to know that. And it's also good to know that if someone can't be here, for whatever reason, they can also email the concerns.
Yep, absolutely. Anybody else have any questions? Ms. Arminio?
Sure, let's start with state aid. So we don't know yet what state aid will be.
No.
Okay, and
We don't know what the increase will be. We would expect the same amount, plus we would expect an increase, but we don't know what that will be.
Well, they have sometimes taken away money too.
Right,
But
they have.
minimally, we're expecting what we got last year.
Yes.
Okay. And you say we've reduced the surplus by 1 million, and then you said the overall reduction, and please correct me, is 1.7 million.
Yeah.
The overall reduction from what?
If you add all those items together that on that page or on the slide, the tax levy increase, the decrease in the excess surplus, the decrease in transfers from other funds, and the decrease in transfer from unassigned fund balance.
So
That adds up to
I'm sorry, go ahead.
to the 1.7 million.
Is it a
Decrease.
reduction from last year's budget?
It's a reduction from the new sources basically in the budget. So we only have a few categories of revenue really that we count on in the budget, like the state aid and the tax levy and everything. So we only, the increases are, it's not the total increase from last year, it's just the increase, the change in the, I don't know how to say it, the source.
The source of
Source.
revenue.
The
right?
source of revenue
Yes.
is being reduced, but
Yeah.
those sources are internal, right? Is the tax revenue being reduced?
No.
No, okay,
No.
so that's what
That's an
it says
increase over
increase.
last year.
That's
and how, and what was that, can you just give us,
Oh, 2.2 million.
I think like the thing to note is even though we're getting that, going to cap, and that's a positive number, getting the
well,
2.2
are we
million.
going to cap?
Yes.
If this is
Yes.
based on going to cap.
It is.
The 2.248 million, right? But all of the other decreases now are putting us in a position where our revenue is still going to be 1.8 million anticipated less than it was anticipated for the previous budget.
Because the budget philosophy has been traditionally the philosophy of the board. And it could be, but the presentation, like a budget presentation is telling us what we're looking at. So it's already been determined to go to cap. By whom?
I would say it's still a discussion, but because we're so low on revenue.
But that's the recommendation of
Correct.
the administration. Okay. And just, and I'm sorry if this sounds like semantics, but I just want to be clear. Superintendent Chandler, you said that the recommendations pretty much will come from the administration, but they will be approved by the board as a vote? Or you're just going to make the recommendations and move forward with them on spending?
It's my understanding that we do the recommendations ourselves, which becomes part of what the budget is, that is then presented to the board for approval. So the answer is basically yes, but not the way you're thinking. We're not going to come to the Board of Education and say, here are all the things that everybody wants. Will you approve it? And then, Ms. Allen, will you make sure the budget works? We're going to create a budget based upon our recommendations as the professionals,
Okay.
and
And
then
then-
the board has the right, of course, to approve or not approve whatever they see fit.
And so we're going to, and what is the cap we're going to? What's the percentage?
2.
Just the 2? Okay, I thought I heard 2 plus something. And we don't know yet what our health insurance premiums are going to be. And is there any, I guess there's no chance for any savings because we're already too low with 1.7 million in less. Okay. All right, thank you.
No question. There's no bank to cap, correct?
Correct.
Can you, I need this, I'm sorry. That's okay, go ahead. I think the public is happy to hear it too. Very briefly, the difference between bank cap and having it and not having it, and what it means.
If you haven't used, if you didn't go to the 2%, you haven't used it in the prior year, or the prior couple of years, I think it is, you can then, it will become an adjustment in
Right.
this year's budget to be able to use, but we have been going to the 2%.
Out of necessity.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
we
yes.
have no, so that means we have not banked any previous
Right.
funds that were available or
Mhm.
not available. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Spearman?
I wanted to go a little deeper into the decrease in the transfers from other funds. So we're putting, this means we had 625 in the current year's budget,
Mhm,
right? And this
yes.
is the money that's typically coming from the enterprise funds. I assume it's really just the Falcon Care and ECE. So at the end of the June 2021, when we looked at the programs, it was pretty much nothing there. It wasn't a loss, but it wasn't a profit when you blended everything all together, so there wouldn't be any opportunity. Is that what's reflecting here, that there's nothing, because we know that we know what enrollment is, we know that there is revenue there and that there will be a couple $100,000, but when is that money available to put into a budget?
Well, right now, we have $200,000 in this current year budget from Falcon Care.
That we're gonna fall
That
short
we
on?
are hoping to be able to do. So, to be conservative, we probably, until we get further along in the year to see what revenues we are getting from Falcon Care, we probably would want to not anticipate budgeting a transfer of revenue from there into the general fund.
I don't know, that just feels like a big difference to me, because now you're talking about it being 10%-ish of the shortfall.
Mhm.
To just dismiss it completely and pretend like there's not going to be anything there, knowing there's going to be
Right.
at least 200,000, and we're expecting even more because we are expecting enrollment to
Right.
get better and the price structure, whatever it's going to change to make it be a more robust, profitable program.
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm
We
not so sure I'm comfortable with that.
And we can wait until, the budget's not going to be done until March, so we can certainly see what the revenues are and see how it looks. We can see how Falcon Care, what revenues they do have in March, say, and go from there and see what their enrollment is like, and certainly put that in. But I don't believe we'll have the 600,000 that we had before.
Right.
At
I
this
agree with you
point.
that it wouldn't be 600, it would maybe be the 250 would be
Mhm.
the conservative end of what we
Mhm.
would count as a revenue source in a budget for the
Right.
23-24.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Reiner?
Just to follow up, I know last month we had discussed this, that there was a change in the laws that there can't be certain separate funds
Mhm.
going forward. Is that something that will be taken into account for this next budget? Because I don't remember specifically which ones are allowed and are not allowed.
Right.
If Falcon, Care,
Right.
ECE can be a separate fund or not.
Yeah, they can. So we can definitely use that revenue, but the iPad reserve money, we cannot, which we did have budgeted last year $325,000 transferred in. So that's going to be in a separate fund, so we're not going to be transferring money in from there anymore.
So
Um,
it's
so
still a
but we'll
separate fund?
It is, but we can't, yes.
We can't hear.
We can,
Oh, I heard
Sorry?
someone say something. I'm sorry.
that's okay.
I thought I heard someone answer the question to you.
It will be treated differently now, more like a student activity account in a special revenue fund. And what we can do then is take the payment that we make for the iPads, say the $500,000 installment payment that we make, we can charge it to that fund instead. So it's kind of, we're not putting the revenue in the budget anymore, but we're also not going to charge that expenditure to the budget anymore. So it kind of is a wash, and it goes into a different fund.
Ms. Bora?
I just want to second what Ms. Bierman said. So the reduction in the revenue, instead of being put in the philosophy at 625,000, maybe if, knowing that we've got, maybe we could put that as $425,000. So that, I know it's a small amount, but it's more accurate, because we're already looking at the revenue. It's going to be less, but it
Right.
exists, right?
Okay.
So that would, I would agree with that recommendation 100%.
Ms. Belko?
I just wanted to add to what Laura said about that, the iPad fund. That was because there's a change in the state regulation. So this is not something we're doing that's new from,
Right.
you know, from us, because we decided this is what we want to do.
Right.
There was a change in state regulation that is making us do this, and so we're following the law and making sure that's happened. I just would like to think that, you know, I think we're getting into the minutia of the budget right now, and I think we're here presenting the budget philosophy and the discussion on the philosophy of the budget, and I think that we should have the rest of these detailed discussions about dollar amounts and things in our future finance committee meetings and our future budget meetings. I just, you know, I'd like to call for an end of discussion at this point, unless somebody else has something about the philosophy of the budget.
Okay. And just one, to piggyback
I'd like to
on what you
say
said.
something if I can.
We were actually told by the auditor that we had to stop using that fund.
Yes.
So not just that we.
It came from him.
It came from the,
regulation
right, that
change,
came
yes.
from the auditor based on the regulation changes. That wasn't something that we did on our own, correct? Did you want to add something?
Yes,
Mr.
thank
Chairman?
you. I appreciate it. Getting off the minutia of the budget and into why we're here right now is to discuss what's going on and then our budget philosophy. And I heard some mischaracterizations here, like we didn't discuss, the board didn't discuss the budget philosophy. We absolutely did. And I want to commend the administration and our board leadership as to how we did it. Because we did it on the committee level, we had a lot of input, we gave a lot of, we had an in-depth discussion in each of the committees, and then the board president and vice president, he brought that up to the administration, and that's where this was born from. So I don't want the public to walk away thinking that something didn't happen. That absolutely did happen. We did discuss it as a board. Whether or not board members were at the committee meetings or not, that's on them. But we did discuss it. I discussed it at several committee meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chiarella. Anybody else? Ms. Arminio?
I don't think this is in the category of minutia, but as in terms of philosophy, one of the things that I would like to make sure in our budget philosophy is that we are open to our summer programs. They were so successful in the last 2 years. They were supported by federal funds and other funds. So I hope that within our budget philosophy, we have room and we have consideration for those wonderful summer programs going forward. So that would be my, I know, but this is our philosophy, so I would like to make sure that as a member of the board, that is something I would want to make sure that we definitely take a look at. I think it's an excellent program, and our teachers and supervisors did a wonderful job for our children.
Yes, and as that was discussed at curriculum, that is something that we are planning, I know, as a district to move forward with and move away from while the government funds, the federal funds are no longer going to be we're thinking coming for that type of a program, we are going to look at that for a revenue source as well. So I know that has been discussed several times at curriculum too. So I'm sure that those summer programs will be included somewhere within the budget. Anybody else? All right, if not, I think Ms. Bierman, you have a resolution to read?
Thank you, yes. It is recommended that the members of the Monroe Township Board of Education establish and adopt a budget philosophy for the 2023-2024 school year, which tasks administration to prepare a budget that responsibly meets the demands of continuing significant student growth and facility needs, as well as program and service requirements without exceeding the board's maximum spending authority, which would necessitate going out to a vote, while prioritizing the following items subject to the restrictions presented by administration. Item 1, construction projects to be recommended by administration on a priority basis. Item 2, curriculum recommendations to be recommended by administration. Item 3, salary and benefit increases at a conservative range due to their contingent status. Item 4, transportation recommendations recommended by administration. Item 5, programs as recommended by administration. And item 6, administration review of non-mandated programs and services with eliminations as a possibility. This action by the board will enable the board to fulfill its educational responsibility to district students in a thorough, efficient, and fiscally prudent manner, while concomitantly ensuring the maintenance of district resources and facilities.
So moved.
Okay. Are there any questions? Okay, may we please have a roll call, Mrs. Tagliaferra?
Ms. Arminio,
Yes.
Ms. Bora,
Yes.
Ms. Ratner,
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella,
Yes.
Ms. Belko,
Yes.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Nicotinsky,
Yes.
Ms. Bierman,
Yes.
Ms. Skirby.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And thank you to the administration, Ms. Allen, for all of your hard work putting together that presentation for us. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is our committee reports. Are there any committees wishing to report? Mrs. Belko.
Yes, I have the report of 2 committees. The first committee I'm going to report on is the Curriculum Committee. We held the Curriculum Committee on Wednesday, November 2nd at 6 p.m. Again, a very lengthy discussion about a few things, and we had presented to us Language Arts 3 AP seminar and grades 6th grade media cycle by Dr. Roselle, information regarding the training in the language arts and the different 10-week cycle in the for the media center at the middle school, and learning about how a media center works, what is, and for those of us who come from way back when, the library is pretty, you know, when you say media center, people sometimes say, like, media center, what's that? But I got to tell you, we're one of the few towns, I think, that has even a public library that is amazing. We have an incredible public library, but we also have really good research and really good media things. But there is a 10-week cycle class that is done. The students are brought in. They're taught about how to do research, about what is good research, what is good sources. They're able to also talk about they do some things about academic speaking and how to work on your poise, your voice, your life, how you make eye contact, gestures, things like that. I probably could take a little lesson there. Language Arts 3 was another presentation, and it's a full-year college prep level course about nonfiction. They talk about heroism and courage, power and ambition, identity and understanding, conflict and change, and they use several books such as Beowulf, Macbeth, Kite Runner, and then they do book club units where they choose things. It's a junior level class, and it is World Lit. Dr. Roselle did a really good job of explaining that on the video in the curriculum committee, so I would listen to her information on that. And then there is the full year AP seminar course, which was presented, and they have 5 different units that are derived directly from the College Board syllabus, and it is the first course of 2 AP capstone in the AP capstone program. They follow a philosophy or a structure called QUEST, which is Q, question and explore, U, understand and analyze, E, evaluate in multiple perspectives, S, synthesize ideas, and T, for team transfer and transmit. They have to do team projects, they have to work together, and however you feel about team projects, you got to do team projects when you work. So you might as well just get used to it and do team projects. So that was that. Mr. Moraldo talked about the Honors Wind Ensemble, and he talked about how it is an honors level course. Students can audition to be into this. They're eligible from 9th to 12th grade. So incoming 9th graders from the middle school can audition for this ensemble, and they teach them foundational standards on visual and performing arts, career readiness, social and emotional learning standards, and technology standards. It is one of 7 audition-based music ensembles at the high school. And it is a blended instructional model. They work on vertical articulation. They rotate instructors throughout the week so that they get different perspectives on the different theories and the different things that go on. And there is a curriculum structure on how they are assessed. And they are assessed by sound quality, musicality, rhythmic accuracy, technical proficiency, ensemble performance, and career readiness. So very good class, and I have to say most of the students who take this ensemble are also taking other AP courses, honors courses, and other things. So it's great to see that we have a music program in the high school that is leveled up to the honors program. Mrs. Gasco did a presentation about accelerated math grade 5. There was a lot of discussion about the accelerated math and how the students are chosen to participate in this program. There is testing that is involved, and there is some structure and some different ways that students can actually be recommended to take this class, and there was a lot of discussion about that. The curriculum is based on, it's content focused, it's basically grade 5, but it's grade 5 curriculum with mostly grade 6 curriculum. These are students who demonstrate a high proficiency in the grade 4, and they take this class. They include more algebraic expressions, equations, ratios and rates, percentages. They go through some geometry, as well as data collection and things like that. That is on, those things are all on the agenda this evening to be voted on. The other committee that I wanted to report on was the Personnel Committee. We had presented to us by administration exit information. There's one retirement, and that was the only exit person information we had. I counted 25 vacancies, but I know that we're doing a lot of interviews from the document, but I thought you said there was much less than that because I thought we were in the hiring process, but we can talk about that later. We went over the equipment manager job description. Apparently we've had equipment manager in the district for many years, and we have had no job description. So we can't have a job without a job description, so therefore we're presenting a job description for an equipment manager this evening, and that is thanks to Mr. Dowling from our Director of Athletics. There's also we reviewed the job description for assistant school BA position, and all of those items will be on the 9 or 10 member vote for things. We did have a presentation also about the cricket club, and there was again a lot of discussion about the cricket club and what we're doing with there. A consensus of the committee is bringing this here for approval tonight. There's still a lot of discussion about that, and we didn't have a full committee that was fully wanted to support it 100%, but we do have a consensus of the committee who would like to support it, so we did ask for it to be on the agenda. There was also a lot of discussion about out-of-state trips. Particularly generated this discussion was the cheer trip that is coming up for the cheer competition, for our cheer competition team. There was some discussion about money and the money expected for the parents to pay for some of the activities and some of the costs of the trip, and that we should be looking a little bit more about the equity of the money that we supply as a board to all the different trips. And we did say we would bring it back for additional discussion. We did say that we would look at it from a very high 30,000-foot lens, so that we can make sure that we are making sure that we are putting equity into this. And and as you know, equal isn't equity. Equity, And fair isn't equal. So we want to look at the equity of all of our programs and trips that we send our students out of state to, and make sure that we are across the board having equity with that. So that was a discussion, and we'll have further discussion about that in future curriculum committee meetings. And that's my report. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Belko? Ms. Scott?
Sorry, I didn't know if you got your hand first. Thank you for that. I had watched the curriculum meeting, and it's great to see that we are starting the cricket club. And I believe Chrissy Skirby, Ms. President, had brought up the funding of how we fund our different sports and activities, and that and I've seen it personally as a parent, that there is some unfairness in how some sports are more funded than other sports. For example, we have an amazing lacrosse program, and we have to pay for our helmets, whereas the football team, they don't. So I think that should be brought up as we go into the budget, more fair balancing of how we fund our sports and what the parents are paying out of pocket versus, the football team barely pays out any versus the lacrosse team paying out more, and, just as a basic example. And now that, if we're going to add a club for cricket, and eventually hopefully funding that as a team, that we can be more equitable and fair in how we balance out the funds to these programs. That was
Yes, and that was part of the discussion
Yeah.
that I was questioning at the committee level, not an opposition to
Right.
cricket or bringing cricket
Right,
to
yeah,
our
that-
school.
yep, that was
But
the
it
gist that
it
I
was
got
just
out of it.
questions of, that I had as far as the funding, and it kept being presented that we were going to provide no funding for it, and that was exactly my point. How is that fair and equitable then
Exactly.
going forward? So,
Yep.
yes.
I just want to add to my report that we did ask for some data to come back to us about the different sports and the, and the costs of each of those, so that we can really take a good lens at
Yes.
that and try to figure it out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ms. Ratner, you had your hand up?
Yes. I just wanted to find out, I know that you had mentioned approximately 25 vacancies, and obviously that's a fluid number. I also know that there's currently a lot of employees that are covering an additional 1 or 2 sections. Is it still considered a vacancy until the position is fully filled? I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, that is correct, and Ms. Belko was correct. When we said 25, that was inclusive of all vacancies. So it may not necessarily be an instructional classroom teacher. It could be a para, a bus para.
Yeah, I should have clarified.
Falcon, no, absolutely. So I think from the classroom instructor, it's much, much less, probably a third. And you are correct. It is a vacancy until it is filled, even though you may have a 70% making sure that the children don't miss any instruction.
Thank you.
Ms. Spearman?
Thank you. Concerning the cricket, I wanted to discuss when we're on the advent of a new, particularly athletic type of club or organization, what our process is for any liaison or discussion with the township recreation area, and looking to them as a partner or even as the owner of something like this, because it may live better there than it does in the high school, or maybe there's a broader interest in this where from the township recreation level, it would be open to elementary grades, middle school, et cetera. So I don't know, I know we have a delegate that participates in recreation board meetings, but over the time I've been here, there hasn't been much news or action or activity in that regard. So I'm wondering what we reserve or what items move in that direction, and if something like this cricket thing should be a candidate for discussion there, and what our process would be and how we would make that work.
Ms. Bora?
I just want to reiterate something from the last meeting, that if we could please, given the report Ms. Belko had, curriculum is a bigger meeting than an hour. We're always rushed. We're not allowed to, ask too many questions, even though I understand too many questions aren't always good, but sometimes Mr. Moraldo typically gets 4 minutes to finish his spiel. So if he's listening in, he'll appreciate me advocating for a longer curriculum meeting. If we could just switch finance and curriculum, or just allocate an hour and a half, I think that there's a lot that happens in that. And so that would be my ask again, that we need to either switch the time or allow an hour and a half. Thank you.
Ms. Belko, did you want to?
I was going to go into negotiations with the finance chair about timing and things, so I was thinking 5:45 to 7:15, which would give us 2 hours. If we don't need it, obviously, we can take a drink or walk away, but it would give us an opportunity to allow good and fruitful conversation to happen. Because it is an important committee, and, you know, we have taken to not just sort of brushing things over, really taking deep dives. So we can have that conversation offline.
Sure.
You take the 7:15 anyway, so what you do with the 5:45 doesn't matter.
Wow.
45 minutes.
Okay, anybody else with curriculum or personnel questions? All right, is there another committee wishing to report? Ms. Ratner?
Yes, I'm going to report on the Community Engagement and Communications Committee meeting, which was on November 1st. First of all, I do want to wish Ms. Fabian well. She could not be here tonight because she is recovering from a medical procedure. So I just wanted to let you know. On November 1st, we had spent a majority of our time, it was board members present were Mrs. Kirby, Mrs. Bora, and myself. And we spent a majority of time discussing what we had learned at the NJSBA workshop in the various sessions. It actually worked out very well that the members of that committee were the members who attended the workshop. So Mrs. Kirby and I, as well as Mr. Shanley, spoke about what we had learned at the legislative panel, which had allowed various legislators to update all of those in attendance about certain issues that were facing education. At that panel, I had the opportunity to ask the legislators specifically about the school funding task force, because that's something that is obviously very important to our town as well as other towns. And we really weren't given any information other than the fact that we were told it had passed through the Senate and was stalled in the Assembly. Other than that, you know, I'd also asked specifically who would be involved in that task force, and that wasn't answered. So hopefully this will come to fruition soon enough, because as we are all aware, the school funding formula is broken and it needs to be resolved. Mrs. Bora had shared information about a session she attended regarding equity in education and the importance of reviewing the landscape of our community. So you being aware of the different communities, the different ethnicities, religions, and what is important to all of the individuals in our town. I had shared information from a session that Mrs. Fabiano and I had attended regarding community engagement in relation to the referendum presentations, and then Mrs. Kirby had also shared what she had learned from a very similar session. After that, we had quickly reviewed the current letter that's listed on our district website, which is published for community members to send to legislators. It's a bit outdated. It is to request additional funding. And Mrs. Kirby had said she would review the wording of the letter, and then we could revisit it next month, so that way we can share that with the public to include our request for this task force to be followed up on. And then we didn't have too much time left, so we briefly discussed updates to our social media scheduling program, as well as current referendum communication.
Anybody have any questions for Ms. Ratner? Okay. Do we have any other committees wishing to report? Mrs. Bierman.
Finance Committee met on Wednesday, November 2nd. Probably started around 7:20.
That's conservative.
Conservative. First item to discuss was the iPad insurance fund. We had a discussion to understand the monies handling for collected technology fees in the high school for the iPad insurance. Please watch the posted committee meeting on the website for more information if interested. Monthly review of the attorney fees, September 2022, the total was $12,724, Oprah portion $1,657. Next item was the monthly review of the bill list. This was for the period up through 11/2, $7,170,015.74. The list was reviewed. Sampling backup was requested, received, and verified. And the anticipated amendment that came between the committee and the board meeting was for an additional $988,983.61. And that's an item on the agenda to vote on the approval of the bill list. We did make an inquiry concerning the unusual volume of voided checks and did receive the explanation that this was due to the board meeting date change, so the existing load of the prepared checks had to be voided and then reissued with the adjusted date. Next item was an audit update. Ms. Allen provided an update on the annual audit, and this will be an item that we'll just include every month since it's sort of on a cycle where it does present, something's happening almost every month of the year, so that we can all kind of better track and understand where we are in the process. So currently, the audit report is being put together, and there should be a preliminary presentation for the December meeting, and it's the typical items that are lagging from the numbers that need to be released from the state that'll get adjusted after that preliminary presentation before it's finalized. And the final item is budget update. We had a discussion concerning the status of preparation in the annual budget and a budget philosophy presentation being anticipated to the board for the next meeting, which is tonight. And at present, preliminary meetings were happening with the building administrators to start harvesting the framework for the anticipated needs for budget inclusion and consideration. And that concludes my report.
Does anybody have any questions for Mrs. Bierman? Ms. Moore?
Ms. Bierman, I'm not sure if, I had a question on the bill list. I don't know if I should ask that during the vote or right now.
No, you could do it now.
I could ask that. Okay, so, and I want to first appreciate the detailed color-coded bill list that tells us the checks that have been paid before the board meeting, even though we're approving them today. There seems to be a charge, the last check, I think is check number 49237 for $34,000. And I apologize, I have the old bill list here, the one in the email I don't have access to right now, but it seems that this $34,000 that we paid on 28th is kind of a recurring expense because I saw it in the list for approval for this month also. So can you explain what that charge is and why did we have to pay it before the board meeting? Before the approval. This is the last, I think, yeah, the check number is 49237. It's the last one in the color-coded list.
That was effective.
Use your mic.
Effective School Solutions, which that was something that is mental health services that we're using at the middle school, and they're funded through a grant.
Okay.
So it's that's what that is. So that's why there could be more than one month.
So if I now that you say it was, I think it was. There are 4 items for each one. There are 4 different schools that you paid that for.
It's 4 different grants. That's why it's split out that way. We just split it out by each grant. So that's why there's 4 different amounts.
Okay. Is there a reason why it had to be paid earlier before the board meeting? That's what this list is, right? The color-coded one where.
Correct.
Based on our auditor's report last month, we're now emphasizing on the needed aspect.
Right.
So I want to understand the need for paying this before, you know, if I can say it that way.
I honestly, I can't off the top of my head remember, but I think it was likely it was just it was late. It had to be paid because it was late.
Okay.
It could have been, it's likely that it was, we were waiting for signatures or something. We didn't, when we finally got them, it was time.
And I am right, this does come every month. This
Probably, because it's a grant for $170,000, so we will see it over a period of time.
Okay, and this early payment is not normal?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
I think it's just catching up.
Mr. Ratner?
I do just want to follow up on this. I know you had mentioned $34,000, and you mentioned the grant's $170,000. When that grant money is up, is that a program that will remain in place? Is that something that I guess would be discussed in the budget going forward?
Ms. Chandler?
Sure. I actually just had a conversation with Ms. McConnell, who is our supervisor of grants and testing, regarding this specific program, which is currently being utilized at the middle school. So they feel very passionately that it's really been a wonderful help. It's work for mental health, and it's having a specialist in the building working specifically with children who perhaps may be in such need that they might be placed out of district at a future time. So the conversation did ensue, and they started to have the conversation, and we were very clear that at this time, Ms. McConnell has looked, and there is no funding source as far as grants. So we said, well, we're in the process of doing defense rounds. Put it in your budget. Let's have that conversation, exactly what you just said. So I literally just had this conversation yesterday. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, are there any other committees that want to give a report? Mr. Chiarella?
Yes, thank you. We had Buildings, Grounds, and Transportation Committee meeting on November 1st here in the Media Center at 8 o'clock. Might have been 8:10. Was that 8:10? 8:15. We discussed 3 items, and so the first was Pleasant View landscaping contract status. So they were our groundskeeper, landscaper, grass people, and they sold their business. And so the committee decided to rebid that contract instead of going with the new company that bought this company. We'd like to just see, the committee would just like to see what we come up with from a bid standpoint and how that works out, if it works out better for the district. And so that's what we're looking to do, and we're putting that forward. The next thing that I have is an Eagle Scout project for Barclay Brooks School. So we had an Eagle Scout candidate and current Monroe Township High School student. His name is Rayhan Bora, and this was a great young man, and this project's near and dear to my heart. These not because it's the son of my good friend Miss Bora here, but because he's a great young man, and he came and gave a great presentation. He wants to have a story walk. He wants to build a story walk at Barclay Brook, which is a wonderful idea. And we just went through what it would look like, what his costs would be. He's going now to fund it, so anybody who wants to donate and help, or he's open to taking donations and help. And but I'm asking for the board to accept it tonight, because I think it's a great project. And Ms. Bora she must be a great parent, because she has great children. So he's a wonderful young man. And the last thing that we discussed was referendum marketing. So Ms. Chandler gave us an overview of the Township Oktoberfest event with the rain and all, right? So, and we did get some sunshine, right? So there's always a silver lining. But we talked about how we're going to go about marketing the referendum, and we discussed various things. Posting project posters in the town, around the town, rec center, library, town hall, talking about it in planning sessions at town hall. The committee would like the administration to explore advertisements in local lifestyle magazine and the Monroe newspaper, which is the Monroe News, which is the Monroe newspaper, and social media outlets such as Facebook Live and that kind of thing. So that we talked about partnering, having the administration partner with some of the owners or the people who head various Facebook pages and social media pages to try to just help selling the referendum to the public, educating the public as to what the referendum entails, and then to look at and to explain the referendum in detail so that everyone understands that this is not about trying to put through a referendum that's not going to pass. A $200, $300, $400 million referendum is ridiculous. Prior boards have tried it, and they failed splendidly. They failed splendidly. And so we want to make sure that this one passes, and the way to do that is to be open and honest, upfront, and transparent, which is something, frankly, that hasn't always taken place with this Board of Ed, not this board, but prior boards, where we went for trickery and scams and weird ballot questioning and things like that in order to try to trick the public into whatever the outcome was, which I don't think was always clear to the public, and that was the problem. And that's one of the main reasons why it failed, or they failed. So anyway, that was our Buildings, Grounds, and Transportation meeting. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Chiarella? Mrs. Ratner?
Yes, I just had a quick question or comment. First of all, Ms. Bora, I've adored your boys before we even had a personal relationship, because I'd always heard wonderful things about them. So kudos to them and to you. And obviously, I would fully support any project they would be doing. I know Ion, I think, had done the Gaga pit, which was a wonderful idea. I guess my question, and this certainly would not fall on the Eagle Scout, but we always talk about making sure what's done at one school is then shared with other schools. Of course, I would not expect an Eagle Scout to then go to every school, but if something like a wonderful addition is put at one of these schools, by an Eagle Scout or an outside organization, is it then looked at to add that to the other schools of that same level as well?
Mrs. Chandler?
So that's an excellent question, and that's very doable. So the principals of the elementary school, because there's more than one school other than the middle school and high school, they meet sometimes weekly, bi-weekly, most certainly at a minimum of 2 times a month. And they have these constant conversations because we always talk about, equity, parity. Fair isn't always equal, but we want to make sure the children have the same opportunity regardless of what side of town you live on. So that is definitely a conversation that can be had. And I have seen in the past that there are activities or things that memorialize themselves in the elementary schools, and all of a sudden it was very natural, let's say, something that was always done in Oak Tree, and then you hear that it's going on in other schools. I just use Oak Tree as an example. So I absolutely agree. So that is something that I can easily share, or Dr. Lehman could share, or we could both share with the principals, and I want to, we have some elementary principals actually sitting in the back, because I do agree that the story walk is fantastic. So.
Ms. Bohr?
Ms. Gerber, if I can comment on that. Our town has 3 Boy Scout troops. We have a few Boy Scouts and also a Girl Scout in attendance today trying to meet one of their merit badge requirements. So I just wanted to add that while from taxpayers' money perspective, we may not be able to always provide that same, like a Gaga pit was built in Oak Tree, then in Applegut, and then my older son built it for Brookside. I am sure there are scouts looking to make Eagle who can do the same project for other schools in our town, similarly the story walk. So my hope is for people who are attending the meeting and listening to the meeting online, there's so many opportunities of Eagle Scout projects which would not only be a way for you to do community service and give back to your community, but give back to your own schools and also help us get equity amongst all schools in terms of, without spending more of the taxpayers' dollars.
If not, I have full faith in your boys that they would just get it done anyway. So.
Thank you. And just, on that, I know some of the other elementary schools do have story walks. They might not be as permanent structure as that, because the day after that meeting, I drop off at Oak Tree every morning, and as I turn the corner, there was a story walk, and that sparked the conversation in our car. Oh, was that a story walk? And it's Humpty Dumpty. I asked my son, I go, well, do you read it on the playground? So I thought that was interesting that they are there in the schools. And I think Barclay Brook has one that's not permanent now. So there is parity amongst that. This isn't something that he took on himself and came up with that. I think it's more of improving what's there and building a permanent, more permanent structure. Anybody have any other questions on BG&T? Okay, our last committee is policy.
I was unable to attend the policy meeting, so I believe the superintendent led that meeting. And there was a discussion of the HIB and conduct.
Yes, yeah,
So if you want to mention it, that's fine.
Okay, yes, so I was there in attendance as well. If you want to give an update on what was spoken about at the meeting.
Yes, and actually the president led the meeting as one of the committee, so I want to say thank you. We basically collaborated and simply put the HIB, harassment, intimidation, bullying, which is readily accessible on our website, all the information, questions, statute, law, definition, and so forth is available to you, and has always been since it has been brought here. I want to say approximately, 10 years by now. I think it's almost 10 or 11 years at this time. So Ms. McConnell, who's our harassment, intimidation, and bullying district level supervisor, she did an overview of not really a change, but what we are currently doing and following the policy. And I think what had sparked the conversation with Ms. Arminio previously, and then sadly she wasn't able to attend, but she did start the conversation. We wanted Ms. McConnell to come and just reiterate that harassment, intimidation, bullying is a law that we follow, but it is in addition not in place of the code of conduct, which then sparked a conversation, and I had asked the principals or the designees to please come and present on the code of conduct, which they did. So for the elementary school, we had Miss Pamela Ackerman Garcia, who's in the back. I want to thank her for coming. We also had Miss Dawn Graziano, who's also here. Thank you for coming. So they did do a discussion on code of conduct, because code of conduct, lower elementary and upper elementary, is very different. And then Dr. Higgins was here on behalf of the middle school, and we had Mr. Sinansky here on behalf of the high school, because Dr. Higgins from the high school wasn't able to attend. And basically what we wanted to explain is that all matters that are a concern, whether they meet I don't like the word requirement because it almost sounds positive, whether they meet the definition of what makes it harassment, intimidation, and bullying under this statute, or whether they meet a code of conduct issue, is an issue. So it perhaps may not meet either, but it should be brought to a guidance counselor, a school counselor, an assistant principal, a classroom teacher. So we do want the public to know that if there is a matter that comes up, it doesn't have to meet any of the thresholds. If your child is having a concern, it needs to be brought to the school so that we can work in collaboration to make your child feel safe and happy and want to come to school. That's first and foremost. That's more important than any law. Then they went into the conversation, and this is something that I continually say and I've always said even as a principal, all harassment, intimidation, and bullying behaviors are accountable under the code of conduct, but it doesn't mean that they would be founded under harassment, intimidation, and bullying thresholds. So someone makes a really bad choice, physically hits another child, code of conduct automatically, parent says, no, that's also a HIB, or that is a HIB, the HIB is filed, there is no distinguishing characteristic, there is no nexus in school, whatever it might be, I'm just coming up with various different things, it's still code of conduct. So consequences, or the ability to change behavior, because that's even more important than the consequences, is going to ensue and continue regardless of whether or not it meets the threshold of harassment, intimidation, and bullying. So that was the gist of the entire meeting. Additionally, prior to this current time, when the word HIB was uttered in any way, it could be a staff member, a parent, another child, the administration, under the way it was perceived and presented to the administration from the upper administration, prior superintendents, the minute they said HIB, there was no conversation. The HIB was filed. There's a certain format that is very different than code of conduct. Both parents need to be contacted of the alleged aggressor and the alleged victim, and then the administrator, be the principal or vice principal, is removed out of it, and then you have anti-bullying specialists who step in. There was no conversation about, oh my goodness, we want to help this child for sure, but looking at this and being trained year after year after year, this will not meet the threshold if it's harassment, intimidation, bullying. It still had to go through the whole process, and even though if it wound up being kid conflict or code of conduct, it still had to go through the process. Now, the way it stands, through the state's approval as well as the Board of Education's acceptance, it is now it's a collaborative conversation between the administration, principal, vice principal, school counselors that are involved with the children, anti-bullying specialists, superintendent, assistant superintendent, about whether or not it needs to go that route or it's automatically code of conduct. So what does that mean? I want to be clear. It does not mean it will not be taken care of. It does not mean that we will not report on it. It does not mean that it will not be handled. What it means is, based upon the threshold definition as we've been trained, it is not going to meet harassment, intimidation, and bullying. So therefore, rather than go through that process, we are automatically going through the process of the code of conduct. And the code of conduct can also be interaction, making the person change their behavior. When we say kid conflict, we mean we used to have a resolution. We used to have conflict resolution. It was an actual program in the middle school and the elementary schools and the high school. So I think that what we want to do is we want to respect the state, and we understand this law came to be because school districts were not, I'm not naming any because I don't know who they are, but perhaps school districts were not doing their job that they needed to do by protecting the children. So the state came along and said, we're going to make a law and we're going to hold them accountable. We always hold our children accountable. we have to also remind parents that unfortunately, by privacy laws, we are not allowed to ever tell a parent how we handled that situation. So that was another topic of the conversation, for if you were able to watch it, if anybody who saw it, where the principals were having that conversation. So it was a very worthwhile conversation. Thank you, Ms. Arminio, and thank you very much, Ms. Skirby, for stepping in. And I think that it did provide some clarity. I think as a parent, or a sibling, or even the child, if you want to watch that meeting, it does give you an understanding. And then by all means, of course, access is available through all the links and so forth that is on our website. So I hope that provided some summary, not perhaps brief, but it was a summary. Thank you.
And the changes that are on for the first read were changes that came through us from Strauss Esme, which were changes in the statute or the law that are mandated, not anything that we're changing on our own as a board. Does anybody have any questions?
I just wanted to mention really quickly, because I was curious, I know in the middle school they discussed code of conduct. I was curious about the elementary school code of conduct. It is in Genesis, if anyone's ever, a parent's interested in seeing it, and it also does describe HIB versus code of conduct right there. You just get an off on it with several other forms, but if anyone wanted to see specifically what it says, it is there.
Does anybody have anything else? No? Okay, that's it for our committee reports. Our next item on the agenda is our public forum for agenda items only. If you'd like to come and speak, you have 4 minutes. State your name and your municipality. Do we have anybody wishing to speak on our agenda this evening? Good evening.
Hello, I'm Doug Poy. I've been a 53-year resident of Monroe Township, and I still live here. I have several questions about the agenda. Under the superintendent's report, there's a personnel item 20 and 21, I think. There's been a change in the number. It refers to a PAC coordinator and student supervisor. I'd just like some clarification as exactly what that is. That's my first question. Second question, this is under the business administrator report. I noticed that there's some unused vacation pay, and it says something about, it looks like terminal or retirement to the staff in the amount of $37,000. Is that because of the recent discovery by the auditor? Or is that something else? I'd just like some explanation as to what that $37,000 is all about. On page 3 of the business administrator's report, there are 2 entries for what appears to be a superintendent's salary. And it also appears on pages 7 and 8. But if you take the entries that are on, well, page 3, you take those 2 entries, it comes out to $21,577, which would equate to $258,942. I'd like some explanation as to what that's all about, because that certainly seems like it exceeds the salary that the community thinks the superintendent is being paid. Once again, I said that entry also appears on pages 7 and 8. In the bill list, there were 167 checks that were issued on October, I think it was the 27th, and they were then voided. Like some explanation as to what that was all about. And on pages 12 and 13 of that bill list, I noticed that we paid $7,000 for banners. I'd like to know what those banners are. And finally, one comment. This is a comment based on a remark that Mr. Chiarella made. In terms of marketing of the referendum, I would strongly suggest that you consider contacting all the adult community newspapers, because almost all of the adult communities have newspapers, and that would be another source of getting out information on the referendum. Thank you.
Okay, so I wrote down your questions, and we'll see what we can answer here this evening. The first one, the PAC advisor, Dr. Lehman?
So the PAC advisor refers to the Performing Arts Center, and those staff members oversee the use of the technology equipment and interact with the students that are also engaging in managing events and things like that. So that's a stipend position that covers their time and oversight of the students when they're running events and assisting in events in the Performing Arts Center.
Okay, it seemed like a rather excessive amount, unless they're really doing a lot more work than I think they are. But
It's a tremendous one. They're actually in the room right now as well, doing similar things, and they'll go down and do the Performing Arts Center as well. They cover concerts during the school day. There's, they're overseeing students and managing that piece as well. So but it's primarily, this monetary piece is for after hours, nighttime events, weekend events, whatever it is.
So that's covering their presence at the board meetings as well?
Well, the board meeting is also that's just part of a class as well. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And the second question you had on the BA report about the unused vacation pay, Ms. Allen, do you want to address that?
Can I just ask what you're looking at, what page?
I don't have the page number, I'm sorry.
What are you looking at exactly, though?
Section and item would be good.
But I thought Mrs. Bierman might have picked up on that, since she's the one, I believe, that takes responsibility for reviewing the bill list. Can she shed any light on it?
On the voided checks, I did, so that answer you have from my report. Right. So on the voided checks question, that was answered during my finance report. So it had to do with the board meeting being changed, so they had checks prepared in anticipation of a board meeting that was coming up. That board meeting changed date, so they voided the checks that were already prepared with the date based on that board meeting, and had to reissue them with the new date. So that's why there was an odd volume of those voided checks this month.
All right.
Bill list? Okay.
And
the bill list on the banner item, I know that was one of the items I actually audited for this month. It was something to do with the athletic department. I don't know any more specifics between that, but I did see the purchase order and the signatures and stuff on it.
$7,000 for banners for the athletic
I
department?
believe there was even more than that. That was one of several checks to that vendor, if you look.
And also, if you look outside around our high school, they've put banners up all along the parking lot.
I noticed that, and I kind of questioned, was that a good use of board money? But go ahead.
Okay. Oh, yes. So when an employee leaves the district, if they have, if it's in their contract and if it's according to law that they can get unused sick pay or unused vacation pay after they retire, then that would be the payment that you're seeing for an employee that has left the district.
Okay, and if I understood the the auditors correctly from last month's presentation, that's limited to 20 days?
2010. Yeah, May of 2010. If it was somebody who was here before that, hired before that date, and they had days accumulated, they can get paid out for that when they retire or when they leave, depending on whether it's vacation or sick day, or sick time rather. And there are some limits, but this particular one was not limited.
I thought that auditor had said that everyone was limited.
No, a sick time may be limited. According to your contract, but sick time is limited. Vacation time is generally unlimited if you were hired before that date.
Before 2010.
But yeah. So this is somebody's vacation time that they had not used.
Okay, and what about the superintendent's salary figures?
Okay, and you're getting that from this?
There was, the first two entries I saw were on page 3.
Page
of the
3
bill,
of the bill
list.
Okay.
There was one figure in the amount of $8,965, and then just a couple of lines below that, another figure for $12,612, which came to $21,577 per month.
Right. Okay, so this is not a particular person, this is the account. So anybody who's in that account, there are other people that are on that line item, included in that line item for superintendent's office.
And we can,
So it's the whole superintendent account line
Okay.
item.
and we can confidently say we pay based on the contract and the terms of the contract.
Yes.
There's no debate there.
So those line items include more people than the superintendent?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And I think that was all of the questions that you had asked. Anybody else wishing to speak from the public?
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Gail DePayne, 35060 Old Nassau Road. I just had an observation on your budget philosophy. When it came down to the discussion, and I don't know if it was Ms. Arminio or somebody that started it this way, on the one slide that had all the statistical numbers on it, I think it should have been put back up for the public to observe your conversation so that we could see what you were talking about in case we had to come up here and have any questions about it. So we were looking at a screen of nothing that you were talking about. So it's just an observation. I think the public should be aware of what you guys are talking about. Number two, I have a question. When you go to do your budget, do you get itemized lists from all your principals? And then you knock it down according to how your budget goes in order to get under the 2% cap? Is that how you do your process?
Do you have other questions besides that? I just want to make sure we do it the same
I
format
just
for
had one
everybody.
other comment, the cheerleaders. I was a cheerleading coach for 20 years for Pop Warner, and I know cheerleading is not considered a sport. It's a club. So I think Monroe should be the first district. It is a sport here. Oh, years ago it was not, so I take that back. I'm glad it's a sport, because it should be. Those girls work so hard as any other sport, and put their lives on them when they throw them and all that stuff. Because I know the Monroe Wolverines just won a big district competition, and they're excellent. So I'm so happy that it's a sport. Thank you. So no, that was it.
Okay. So Ms. Chanley, if you'd like to speak on the budget?
So when we have our budget defense rounds, the budgets that are presented by the principals, as well as the Director of Pupil Personnel Services, is detailed.
Right.
And their budgets are itemized down to what account it's coming from, whether it's something that is utilized one time, or a textbook, we have technology, audiovisual, and it's quite detailed. So when we go through it, they give us a copy. So it'll be myself, Ms. Allen, Dr. Lehman. We sit together and we have a discussion. Sometimes they'll bring an assistant principal depending upon their size. They want someone to learn because it's a great opportunity, and they go through everything. We do not micromanage in the specificity of remove that particular item. Rather, they will say, I'm thinking from middle school, so the world language has a page, and then social studies has a page, and ELA has a page. And depending upon whether it's a consumable item or, let's say, a textbook item, it will be delineated overall cost for that whole department. I'm talking at the middle school level and high school, overall department. And included in there, because they've already had pre-budget meetings, is inclusive of whatever the supervisor has brought to them regarding programs, if it's textbook adoption year and so forth. So we have an opportunity to see the micro details of everything, but when we have the conversations about what is feasible and what can be done and what can't be done, we don't just eliminate it ourselves. It's a conversation with the principal because they know where their needs are at the greatest level.
Well, I never suggested that, you would do that.
No.
I just was asking,
Do we?
that
Absolutely,
you do
and we do
that,
not.
and the principals, because I know you have to come under 2%. Because if it's over 2%, you have to put it out for a vote, and you don't want to do that because it always goes down. So I was just asking if those principals when do they submit their wish list, I guess you want to call it?
So when we sit down and we have a budget meeting, so they've had preliminary meetings, and then the next meeting will be a meeting where they'll come in with their official budget. They all have like mini budgets that become the major budget, and they have their official mini budget, and we sit down and we literally have the conversation about, where is this need, and then sometimes we think out of the box about what we could utilize instead if we need to save some money. We look at staffing, what's your staffing, what you need, what's current 17% that maybe wasn't a teacher, what is a teacher. We go through all that, and then we make suggestions, we hear their input, and then whatever changes we make, we ask them, they take it back because we don't want too many copies, they take everything back, and then they resubmit based upon the conversation and the discussion.
Exactly. Is Finance Committee involved with that too?
The Finance Committee is not involved, Ms. Allen is involved.
Ms. Allen, but not the Finance Committee?
No, that is correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public wishing to speak on the agenda? Good evening.
Hi, Linda Bazowski, 388A Orrington Lane in Rossmore. I have a positive thing to say, and then I have a question. My positive thing to say is related to the BGT comment about, and the general communication that we need to have publicity for the upcoming referendum. I'm relaying to the board an invitation on behalf of the League of Women Voters that we are more than happy to host an event for the board, for you to come and present to as many people as we can get to come out and hear it, because people need to hear what it is that we're proposing for our community. My question for tonight, and the other questions I have will be in the non-agenda section. On page 8, I'm a little confused about item N, which is related to the business administration position. If I'm reading this correctly, and please correct me if I'm not reading it correctly, it appears that we're now making Ms. Allen the permanent school board administrator / board secretary effective January 1st through June 30 at a salary that is less than she's currently earning as the acting secretary and business administrator. And then the other part of that question is that our policy, if I've read it correctly, says that the SBA / board secretary should be one position, which it has been in the past, to my understanding. So does this item N mean that, first of all, this is now a permanent position for Ms. Allen, and secondly, that Ms. Tagliaferro will no longer be the board secretary? And that's the only question I have for this portion.
Okay, did you want to speak to that?
Absolutely. Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
So tonight, and of course, under the purview of the board, it will be a recommendation of the superintendent, myself, that she will become the permanent business administrator / board secretary.
Right.
So we want to thank Ms. Tagliaferro, who is here ill this evening. Not that she's contagious, but she is ill, and I want to thank her for stepping up and being here, so thank you very much. So her services are always going to be needed in her position as the confidential secretary to the business administrator,
Absolutely.
but she will not be here after December.
Right.
And that is correct for January. And did I answer both questions?
Well, my other part of the question, or included in that
Oh, the
question,
salary.
was the salary portion
No,
is now being reduced.
It's actually not, because what's happening is Miss Allen is currently doing 2 jobs. She's currently the acting business administrator and the assistant business administrator. So the additional monies that was approved by the board previously was because she's literally doing 2 jobs. So what will happen is once she takes on the role, if the board approves it, as the business administrator, we're currently in the process, because we have anticipated, which we are permitted to do, we have an anticipated search going on where she has been actively interviewing candidates as a replacement if she is board
For her
approved.
previous
That is
position
correct.
as assistant business
Correct.
administrator. Okay, so that the salary will not have an extra $7,500 a month as extra remuneration for doing 2 jobs.
That's correct.
Which is what the previous
That's
agreement
correct.
was. Okay, thank you very much
You're
for the
very welcome.
clarification. Okay, I'll be back.
Is there anybody else wishing to speak to the agenda? No? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public forum. Our next item on the agenda is our Assistant Superintendent's Report. Dr. Lehman?
So I have 2 brief highlights from, I guess, a coming event, as well as something that happened recently. So the Monroe Township High School Marching Band, they competed their 2022 competitive season. students. They did a tremendous job. It was a ton of work, but they participated in their final competition on November 6th. They placed third in the U.S. Band's Group 4A National Championships in Allentown, Pennsylvania. So notably, congratulations. Notably, that's the highest placement we've had in probably a decade or so. So we had a tremendous band program this year. I'm sure we saw them at the football games and things like that. But they did an outstanding job. And the director is Sean Nagapal. So congratulations to him. This is his first year as the director, and he did an outstanding job. And then secondly, Mr. Snyder relayed some information. So the Honors Percussion Ensemble has been accepted to perform a concert at the 2023 National Association for Music Education All-Eastern Conference. The conference is a biannual event. It brings together 11 East Coast states, and it holds this prestigious event in music education for teachers and professional musicians alike. It features clinics, performances from top educators and performing groups. Groups from all 11 states were eligible to audition for a performance. The Honors Percussion Ensemble was one of only 2 ensembles of any kind accepted to perform in the event from New Jersey.
Wow.
So, congratulations. And the conference is going to take place in Rochester, New York this coming April. So, those are 2 tremendous highlights from our performing arts area at the high school. And that's my report.
Thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is our superintendent's report. Mrs. Chanley?
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody, again this evening. Thank you for being extremely patient as we went through the budget philosophy. I would like to, once again, send out my best wishes for families of veterans as well as veterans who have served this country honorably. I think it is so important that we do not forget that it's not just a day off. I know that sometimes we get excited that we are home, but at the same time, the reason why we're home is because other people had left their homes. And I did want to take a moment to thank all the veterans. And I think veterans' families as well, because all too often we forget that people are affected in many ways when you have a family member that is a veteran. So I wanted to acknowledge as the, within the student committee reports, there was it's an annual event that occurs at the middle school. I was very appreciative to be invited. I didn't want to, forget that was my home. And we thank the veterans that come and speak to the children in the assemblies. And the culinary arts department under the chef did an incredible job. You would think that you were in an Italian restaurant in New York City. The food was exceptional. And I know that the veterans love coming and they love speaking to the students, as well as to the staff. And I hope to also be attending, Mill Lake is having a veteran celebration as well, which also was mentioned by Ms. Papandrea, who is a teacher over at the Mill Lake School, and that will happen this Friday. So we're just very excited. I think it is also appropriate for me to just make a quick comment, and I have my notes here. So what we've been doing is we've been meeting as, we're calling it the referendum planning team, and it's basically having the conversations that we're having at the CE and C committee, and we continue to have as well as B, G, and T, and finance, because everything is related. And we had a 2.5-hour meeting yesterday, and I want to thank Dr. Lehman, Mr. Feldman, Mr. Tague, Mr. Moraldo, Ms. Allen, and myself. We meet, and we're meeting regularly now to have the conversations about the referendum planning and getting the word out to vote on April the 18th of 2023. So we had different conversations about timing. So we're in the process right now. Mr. Feldman is in the process of rebuilding, because everything is coming out new. So we're rebuilding the website. We want to make everything very user-friendly. He did comment that a lot of what he's doing is going to be geared towards the phone, because we really do find that, not to say you can't get on it through a computer, I don't want you to misunderstand me, but if you'll notice when you send something via phone versus when it's on the computer, it does have a different look, the way it's picked up. So he feels that that's important. We are talking about, we did make a selection, so we have the renderings that you have seen that are out. So Mr. Moraldo is working diligently to make additional renderings on whatever is the most accommodating as far as space. So we made some selections, so that has been determined. The displays, Mr. Tague is going to be in contact with the business administrator for the township, and we're going to be having the conversations about locations for in-district and all the municipal buildings, so they will be accessible in all of the schools as well. We have honed in on 2 dates that we feel are going to be, in addition to everything else we're doing, 2 town hall meetings. We haven't determined yet where they would be, perhaps maybe one side of town, the other side of town. Sometimes we do them in the middle school and high school because it's centrally located town halls. We're looking at purposely having those in March. So what would that mean is, no, we're not waiting till March. It means that those will be the 2 big town hall meetings in March after we do all these other things. We're going to be doing a mailing. We talked about having a commercial. We talked about continuing with the social media campaign. So our social media, we use Sprout Social, which helps push it out to all the different social media that we have here in the district, as well as speaking with businesses and asking them they would put it on their social media. And one of the things is we have to be cognizant that we can't have, I know a lot of the parents and a lot of the community members have asked, well, we want to see the inside. We want to see it all. Well, we cannot put that on displays, because it will take up too much room in the library and the rec center. So what we'll do is we're going to select 1 or 2 pictures of each of the schools from the external as well as the internal, and then a QR code will be placed on all of the displays. And that will allow anybody to walk over with their phone, and once they click on the QR code, the current website, thank you, the current website that is working on right now, which will be finished, will then take them to a rotation, almost like a slideshow, of all of the pictures inside, gives you an idea of you in the building, all of the external pictures that we're not able to fit, and so on and so forth. And also, we started our questions and answers sheet. And as we keep on repeating, we know that we will get the state contribution number. We're not saying any number because we have no idea what the number will be, and that number is going to be coming to us, we think, January 17th, 18th. I know the 15th is a Sunday, January 16th I know is Martin Luther King Day, so I do know that we're hopeful that it'll be 17th, 18th, because we want to be so transparent, we want to be accurate. The $103 million number, which we have now and at Oktoberfest, we talked about, is all in. We are waiting to hear what the states are going to contribute. And upcoming school events. So we have a calendar of events. Mr. Moraldo is presenting it to us, so what we're thinking is that perhaps we will have, at the upcoming events, a display with the QR code, and then we also, I'm in the process, I am creating a letter, and I want to make it personalized, so each letter will go to every one of the planned retirement communities, and we're going to be asking them if they'd like to invite us, as Mr. Payne, thank you, invite us to the League of Women Voters, to come, and anyone that invites us, we will go. So we have a lot of different things going on. Like I said, we also have a mailing. We're looking to work in collaboration with the MTEA regarding what they are able to do as well. And that's where we're at in the process. So we want to thank you for your patience as we continue to do that. And something else was brought to my attention. We are very respectful that we have a population of people that perhaps leave the state of New Jersey during the very cold months. And we want to make sure that when we do our big town halls, in addition to whatever we are invited to, and in addition to whatever else we do at events in the schools, that is why we're thinking March. We want to be respectful of those individuals who return to their home state of New Jersey in the warmer month, and it's usually about the beginning of March, end of February when they come back. If they come back later, then of course we're going to make sure that everything is videoed and the presentations are out there as well. So we know the vote is April the 18th. On that note, I'm going to continue. I would like to first acknowledge, before I ask for my roll call, I would like to first acknowledge our retirements, which is always very exciting. So we have 3 retirements this evening. We have Miss Lisa Price Lipinski. She's a teacher of special education at Woodland and Monroe Township Middle School. Miss Danielle Kutcher, who is a teacher of grade 5 at Woodland School. And Miss Denise Fantozzi, who is the principal secretary at Mill Lake School. We'd like to wish them well on their newest journey. Sometimes we say we're jealous, but we wish them well. People work very hard all of the years to get to a point where they are in retirement, and we wish them health, happiness, and a new adventure. So I just wanted to take a moment before I go ahead through the roll call. Thank you. Okay, and at this time, under a 10-member vote, it is recommended that the board approve the attached personnel items A through R.
Make a motion.
Motion.
Second. Anybody have any questions? Mrs. Ratner.
Yes, sorry, I'm just pulling them up. So my first question is that I see this shared position for the PAC coordinator, under the 10-member vote, so I'm assuming it's a high school position, do they go to the middle school, I guess the Marasco, and if not, is there a similar position for that Performing Arts Center at the middle school? And then, as well, does that position then take the place of the requirement of utilizing the outside sound agency?
No. This is for the high school here. That's why it's a 10-member vote. Yep.
And there's no PAC coordinator at that level?
Nope.
Okay. And then my other question was just, I noticed that there are some employees that are receiving 17% additional, and then there's others that are receiving an additional 20%. I guess it's only 3%, but I was curious as to the difference.
It's an excellent question, and Ms. Bora had asked that question in advance of this meeting. So 17% would be for an instructional teacher, 20% would be for a child studies team member, whether it be a school psychologist or an LDTC. Why? Because they work an extra hour every day. So therefore, when you do the calculation numerically, it comes out to 20% rather than 17%.
Okay. I'm sorry, I did have one other question. And this is nothing to do with the person. I was just curious in regards to the contract for the business administrator position. I see that there is, it was mentioned about a 20% discount on the health insurance premium. Is that something that is done for other positions as well, or is that a unique situation? And then I also had seen the tuition reimbursement, which I fully, appreciate because I think professional development is really important. But I was wondering if there is a limitation on the number of credits, because I did not see that there, but I might have missed that.
So I believe the 20% is standard, as she's shaking her head, so I am correct. And tuition reimbursement, it always usually has a cap, because the way it works is it tends to follow the tuition reimbursement of any of the other tuition reimbursements, whether it be superintendent, assistant superintendent, classroom teacher, and so forth.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And those are all pre-approved courses. They have to be approved by the superintendent in advance.
Great.
Anybody else have any questions? All right, Mrs. Tagliaferra, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Mr. Nicotinsky?
Yes.
Ms. Belko?
Yes.
Ms. Bora?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Ms. Ratner?
Yes.
Ms. Arminio?
Yes.
Ms. Bierman?
Yes to all, no on N.
Ms. Skirby?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Ms. Allen. Welcome aboard. And if I could just take a quick moment to thank Ms. Allen. We have not missed a beat, and I want to say thank you very much, because we could not do it without her work in both positions, and we're very excited that she'll be continuing on with us as a team, so go Falcons. Thank you very much. On that note, for a 9-member vote, it is recommended that the board approve the attached personnel items S through AX.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Tagliaferra, may we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Ms. Ratner?
Yes, however, recuse on items AO and AP.
So noted. Mr. Nicotinsky?
Yes.
Ms. Arminio?
Yes.
Ms. Belko?
Yes.
Ms. Bora?
Yes.
Ms. Bierman?
Yes.
Ms. Skirby?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
For a 10-member vote, it is recommended the board approve the attached board action items A through I.
Motion.
Second.
Are there any questions? All right, Mrs. Tagliaferra, can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Ms. Belko?
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Ms. Arminio?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Ms. Ratner?
Yes.
Ms. Bora?
Yes.
Mr. Nicotinsky?
Yes.
Ms. Bierman?
No on E, no on H, yes to all others.
Ms. Skirby?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
And lastly, under a 9-member vote, it is recommended the board approve the attached board action items J through O.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, are there any questions? All right, seeing none, may we please have a roll call, Mrs. Tagliaferra?
Ms. Bora?
Yes.
Ms. Ratner?
Yes, however, recuse on item J specifically for David Ratner.
Ms. Belko?
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Mr. Nicotinsky?
Yes.
Ms. Arminio?
Yes.
Ms. Bierman?
No on N, yes on all others.
So noted. Ms. Skirby?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. That now concludes the superintendent's report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is our business administrator's report. Ms. Allen?
Thank you. It is recommended that board action items A through J be approved with an amendment to the Apex Swim Club to state 72 hours with a total cost of $10,800 by consent roll call by a 10-member vote.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions? Mrs. Ratner?
Yes, I just had a question regarding the bill list. I noticed that there are certain field trips on there which have checks sent out. If a check is sent out from the district, does that mean the cost is covered by the district, or could it mean that the funds are perhaps, collected from parents and then an overall check is sent out?
It could be either way. If it's a trip with transportation, we could get reimbursed by the school, but yeah, so it could be either way.
Okay, and then I guess just to follow up, if there are trips that are covered by the district, I guess, how is that determination made? What trips are paid for by parents versus by the district?
So, and that's a conversation we just discussed as well. So what happens is, depending upon what the trip is, so we know that there are certain trips under the special education programs that are part of the curriculum and part of the teaching instructional practice for the students. So that would be covered. We just recently had a conversation about what would be considered an appropriate trip to be covered regarding parity of activities, whether it be band, chorus, cheerleading, which is a sport, and various different things. So it's an ongoing conversation about what it means. And a lot of the times, if a trip is directly related to curriculum and actually you can meet a standard, it is something that could be covered. And of course, we'd like to cover everything, but because that's not doable, that's the conversation that we have with supervisors and directors and building level administration.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I just had a comment, please. We are voting on the annual maintenance budget and the comprehensive maintenance plan, and I had a little discussion with Mrs. Allen over email on this. I suggest for future years, if this could be brought into committees before it's an annual report, I'm sure we know when it's due, a few months before. If the committee chairs agree, it should be discussed in finance and BGT, just as an overview of what are we planning for the future years. That's my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay. Mrs. Tagliaferra, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Nicotinsky?
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Ms. Ratner?
Yes, however, recuse on bill number, check number 49460 for myself.
So noted. Ms. Belko?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Ms. Bora?
Yes.
Ms. Arminio?
Yes.
Ms. Bierman?
Yes.
Ms. Skirby?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That's it, right? Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda is the board president's report. I just want to say congratulations to our newly elected Board of Education members. I know there are a few here in the audience this evening. It's always great to see members of our community come out and want to be a part of our Board of Education to advocate for the best interest of education. I also want to congratulate Ms. Scott on her election to the Board of Education for Jamesburg.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And we look forward to our new board members taking their oath in January at our reorganization meeting. So I attended the planning board meeting along with, I know Ms. Arminio was there, and Mrs. Fabiano was there as well that evening, where they had the hearing for the master plan for Monroe Township. We had spoken about our concerns throughout some of our committees and BG&T for the build-out being allowed through the master plan. I had spoke that evening on behalf of the Board of Education, and I asked the Planning Board to consider the language that was in the master plan that gives an open door to the builders. Sadly, it fell on deaf ears, and the Planning Board moved to forward it and send it before the council. I explained how the school board can only use a 5-year projections to plan ahead for increased enrollment when we do our referendum, which is important to understand because the master plan is a 10-year plan. So I know this is going to be going before the town council. If anybody is interested in attending that and speaking about the concerns for the master plan, you should attend the council meetings.
I believe they approved it already.
They approved it already?
It might have been in the last council meeting.
Okay.
Huh?
That was that night, I think, right?
No, that was planning board, then it was going to go before the
That
council.
was the last council meeting.
Yeah, the last council.
Okay. At the end of October, I attended the New Jersey School Boards Association Conference in Atlantic City, along with some of my fellow board members, Ms. Ratner, Ms. Bora, Ms. Scott, Ms. Fabiano, along with Mrs. Chanley. I had the pleasure of meeting our county superintendent, Kyle Anderson, in person. Although we had spoken many times on the phone this past year, it was a pleasure to finally meet him face-to-face in person. Mr. Anderson was very complimentary to Monroe and to Mrs. Chanley for all that has been going on this year successfully in our district. I attended many informative sessions in those 2 days while I was there. I did attend a security session led by the Department of Education security personnel. It was very eye-opening with some of the things that he had said. Upon coming back from the convention, I shared what I learned with Mrs. Chanley and our security director, Mr. Selby. One thing that stood out during that session was that they said they would come to any school district that asked to do an evaluation of security practices and make recommendations. It's free of charge. It's run by the Department of Education, and I believe Mr. Selby is looking into that and having them come here into Monroe. The gentleman was very clear that day. He said, you know, there's a lot of security firms here. They will charge you to come. The Department of Education will send me for free, and please use our service because they come in, they will participate in our drills, they will go through the building, they will look at what our plans are, and they'll make any recommendations for where we may be able to improve. So I thought that was a very, very a great session. I know Mr. Selby had already known that gentleman because he had gone to trainings already that were required of Director of Security Personnel. So he was familiar with the gentleman and was going to reach out to see if he would come here. And just lastly, as we celebrate Thanksgiving next week, I want to express my thanks to my board colleagues and the entire district staff for all of the hard work day in and day out, constantly to push our district forward. I want to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving. It's a time to enjoy family and friends and what really matters in life, being together with the ones we love and being thankful for what we have. So that concludes my report, and happy Thanksgiving to all. Right, the next item on our agenda is other board business. So if we have any board members that would like to, Mr. Chiarella.
Yeah, thank you. I have a frog in my throat. I want to congratulate Ms. Scott, and I want to congratulate Ms. Allen. And I also want to thank Ms. Tagliaferro for her hard work and even coming in sick, but I know you stepped up to the plate and did a lot of hard work here for the board and for our district, so thank you. And last but not least, I want to thank Dr. Lehman for his service. So, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chiarella.
Oh, thank you. I didn't know that.
Anybody else? Ms. Bora?
I wasn't following.
It's hard to second that, but congratulations, Ms. Scott.
Thank you.
Congratulations to the new board members who are in the audience, Ms. Alvarez and Ms. DePayne, and to Mr. Tufano. I'm sure he is listening. I also want to congratulate Ms. Allen and thank Ms. Tagliaferro. Like Mr. Chiarella said, you both have made sure we didn't skip a beat. And this year did not have any more road bumps than it already had. So thank you very much. I do want to continue on the track of workshop and share that I was fortunate enough, thanks to the board, the school district supporting it, to attend the workshop this year, and it was an excellent experience. In many ways, there was a lot of learning, there was a lot of networking. The exposition was also very good. I do have something to share about that. Personally, I focused on the governance track. It's my first year as a board member. I had done governance one earlier in the year, but it was virtual, and so I took the opportunity to do it in person as a whole day workshop, and I felt so much more confident when I walked out of it. The other track that I focused on was equity, and this word equity is not equality, has been going around in our board meetings a lot, and I felt like there was a lot of learning in the few sessions that I did that were focused on curriculum and the demographics in town. So a lot of learnings there that I will be, hopefully over a period of time, bringing into my work in policy. The third thing that I wanted to speak about from the workshop was something that fortunately 3 of us could connect, Mrs. Chanley, Mrs. Kirby, and myself. We met the people at the esports exhibition, and Garden State Esports is a nonprofit organization that is encouraging esports, which is essentially, in layman terms, video gaming, as a sport in schools. And what we learned at that booth was really mind-blowing. I honestly think it's a great opportunity, one that Monroe doesn't have currently, and I would, I would recommend that we start working on this in our curriculum in the future. And I see Mrs. Chanley is nodding her head. She's already probably done some head work into it, so thank you very much for that. I also wanted to share that I was, after this workshop, able to finish all my requirements for the new board member boardsmanship certification. Of course, it's now with the NGSBA to review, and I will say I was inspired by Ms. Bierman earlier this year when I found out what she had done. So thanks to the workshop, I got an opportunity to get more credits, and I was able to finish that. Thank you.
You have to serve a full second term in order to get the next level.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Wow. Anyone else? Ms. Ratner?
Yes. So I will piggyback on a lot of what Ms. Bora said. By attending the workshop, I also finished all of the requirements for the new board member certification. So I think that's wonderful that you have completed that as well. I always am a big fan of learning as much as possible. I did want to congratulate our retirees. Personal congratulations to Mrs. Fantuzzi. She's been an integral part of the Lake community. I can remember being a new kindergarten parent and her coming onto social media to answer all the questions us new nervous kindergarten parents had, which was really helpful. So thank you to all of our retirees and to her as well. This being American Education Week, I also did just want to thank all of our professionals. Today is actually, I believe, National Educational Support Professionals Day or something of that nature. I think I got it right. Sometimes these people can go unnoticed in the background, but a lot of them really help keep those wheels turning. So thank you to all of them and everyone else who works for our district and our community and our children. I did have the opportunity yesterday to attend the middle school visitation day, which was really exciting for me. A, because I got to embarrass my daughter a little, but also because it really was like that final step I felt to getting back to normal. And, we're always very nervous to say COVID's gone, but it felt really nice to be in the school with other parents, seeing the students interacting with each other. I also did have the opportunity, after our community engagement and communications meeting November 1st, I didn't know that the coffee house was going on that night till I walked out and saw it there. So I stayed for a while and watched, and we're all aware, but we have such talent. And it's really nice to get to see the kids individually performing. I can also say my kids really enjoyed the high school haunted house. We could go on and on about the wonderful things that go on in our schools, and we'd be here till midnight. So I'm not going to do any more, but thank you to all of those who do that. I did want to mention that this Saturday is the New Jersey School Board Association Delegate Assembly, which I'll be attending. I had sent an email out to all of the board members with the agenda. If there's any concerns you'd like me to ask about or bring up, I'm happy to do so. And then finally, I did just want to, congratulate our new board members, but I also wanted to thank, all of them, Ms. Alvarez, Ms. Bazowski, doing this in alphabetical order, I think, Ms. Cugini, Ms. DePayne, Mr. Elias, and Mr. Tufano. I think all of us sitting up here, regardless of differences that we've had, I think every one of us can say campaigning is not an easy thing. It can take a real toll on you. So thank you to all of you for volunteering and stepping up to serve our community.
Anyone else?
I'll just like to say congratulations to the new board members as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bierman?
Yeah, and I was going to reiterate what Ms. Ratner said from my notes, which was not just the ones that won, but the ones that ran, and that participation is so important in this process, whether you're a candidate, whether you're elected, whether you're sitting at the table, whether you're a part of the community. The participation element is what makes this work, and everybody's participation is valued.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay. Our next item on our agenda is our public forum. Anyone wishing to speak and address the board, you have 4 minutes. State your name and municipality for our records. Good evening.
My name is Bernadette, and I believe I've been here last month. I'm just here because I would like to make a follow-up on when is the board going to be discussing our updated health ed guidelines? Because I believe I brought this up, and I know, I am aware we are using the old curriculum, but that is not my question. My question is, when is it going to be up there? Because we do have concerned parents signing a petition right now that they do want to have this discussed in our board meeting. So I'm just here just to voice out that need, that there are certain items in there that they would like to have their say in it.
So any of the updates will be presented at the curriculum committee when they're completed, and then they will be brought to the full board for discussion. As of now, there's no timeline for that to be completed. It would certainly be done when it's ready to be done, as we've discussed on the phone. It's not something we're rushing into. It's not something that we are doing haphazardly. We will meet the standards, but we also take into account the uniqueness of Monroe Township.
So my question is there an actual deadline that the board will have to, because what we are afraid right now, as some of us are discussing at the back end, is that what will happen is, oh, we're running out of time, let's just approve it.
That's not how the process works. So we would take it through curriculum. It would definitely go through that meeting, and then would be presented in a public meeting like this. There's no rushing through any approvals or anything like that.
Is there a deadline involved that the state requires us that you need to follow this by a certain date, that you should have a decision by it?
The target date for us is to update it at some point this year. Okay. But again, there are districts that have rushed into this and are not getting approvals from their boards.
Yes.
And that's not something we want to do. We want to present something that will be accepted and move forward through the community the way it needs to be moved through. So that's why we're taking the approach we're taking at going through this document. We're learning from the ways of other districts that maybe weren't as successful, and we'll move it forward when it's ready to be moved forward.
Well, what I'm concerned about is how you're wording of successful. Because in our eyes, if the communities fought for it and they have stated their position against these guidelines, then it would be a success for the whole community, including the school. So I would not even use the word they were not successful. It is because those communities voiced out their opinions and took a stand on behalf of the children. So I would hope that the board would consider seriously putting this up so that we as parents would not have to worry about this month after month waiting for it. I'm just letting the board know that there is a petition being routed outside right now asking for our school to please put it up, because this is a serious issue that it needs to be discussed with the community. So I would hope to look for that. I'll be keeping an eye on that curriculum. And I just hope that we'll bring this to a close soon, because we're all keeping watch on it. Thank you so much.
And Dr. Lehman, can you elaborate more on what it is that would need to change specifically?
So the standards were reworded, and the public has seen through social media and things, different variations of and interpretations of the standards. And some districts, like I said, have utilized resources that we wouldn't necessarily choose to utilize. The state provides kind of an overarching expectation or standard for us to implement. Specific changes, our current instruction is embedded in the majority of what's in those standards. They restructured, maybe some things are now expected to be instructed by the end of grade 6. We are doing some things by the end of grade 5. We've done that way for 10 or 15 years. So those are the tweaks and things that we're making. I would expect, there's some language in there that people are maybe uncomfortable hearing, and those are some of the kind of difficult conversations that we may have when we talk about the curriculum. But overarching, I think it's helping understand some of the misconceptions in the way this was rolled out. From its get-go, the state released a document that wasn't correct. They had to pull it back and send it back out again. That gave the impression that certain standards were taught by the end of grade 2, when in reality they were taught by the end of grade 12. So they had to readjust what they put out initially, and in doing so, that created a fury of some issues, which are not issues because when they put out the corrected documents, they become placed in appropriate grade levels. There's certainly a population, a community population, whether it's our town or neighboring towns, that have an issue with the instruction in general, regardless of what would be taught or not be taught. So what we will do when this document's completed and is presented, is share it, explain how it meets the standards. We're not diving any deeper than we need to dive. We will not expand upon things we don't need to expand upon, and we will take a very conservative medical approach when appropriate, and meet the standards at the grade levels they're supposed to be met.
Thank you. And just, something that caught a response, I think what you had meant was the administration in certain school districts brought forth a recommendation that was not successful. That was not that it was not successful in implementing it, but it was that those districts, the administration in those districts brought something to the board, and those recommendations were not successful. And then they had to go back and revise that, rather than working collaboratively with coming up with a curriculum document that would be supported and successful by the board.
That is correct, 100%.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Okay, Linda Bazowski, 388A Orrington Lane. I have, as most of you know, I write for the Rossmore News. I've lived in Rossmore for 7 years. And even though, whether it's a club or a sport, I am one of your cheerleaders. So in this November issue of the Rossmore News, front page, schools infrastructure to get a huge boost. And it talks about the PSEG grant. I thanked the BGT committee a few months ago for doing an outstanding presentation at that meeting. And I would like to thank Mr. Take, who will get this copy of the paper, because he is a great resource when I have questions to be sure that I publish information that's correct. And I hope, Ms. Allen, that you will also assist me on the financial side. I took fund accounting. I didn't love it, but I do speak the language. Now we get to the fun part. This is the broken record portion of my comment. For the 4th time, I will ask the same question. When are the survey results going to be presented? In July, when I asked the question, Mrs. Skirby, your reply was, quote, can now make the results open to the public. In August, when I asked the question at the August 17th meeting, your reply was, we will work to get them released on the district website. For some reason, I guess I didn't come to the September meeting. I have myself marked here as absent. And in October, your reply to that same question was, quote, can most certainly put up survey results, could email them to you since we have your email address. I'm asking the question again. I've seen the survey results. when is the rest of the public going to see them?
We can, I mean, we can talk to, I do not put anything up on the website, so I could ask the administration
I
to look
understand that.
into that.
Right.
And have something up there. I know we did have a superintendent search section on there. It should have been up there. I'm not sure if that was taken down already because the search is over. So it may have been up there and then taken down. I'm not sure, but we can find, we will have, Mrs. Chanley will look into that with our IT
I'll
department.
actually email Mr. Feldman this evening.
Okay.
So I have him post them.
Each month when I've asked the question, I've looked on the website, and it has not been there. As of 12/17 today, there was nothing there, and the survey said the page is now vacant. So there was nothing there, didn't even acknowledge that a survey had occurred. But I just would be interested, I think that people took the time to do the survey, to reply. There were positives and there were negatives in the replies that I saw. And I think that the people who took the time over a holiday weekend are entitled to see the results. So thank you very much. That's all.
Did the district email them to you? I'm curious. You said you saw the results.
I saw them elsewhere.
So from a board member?
No, I did not see them from a board member.
Okay. There was
Okay.
only released, I believe, to the board members, a hard copy. And that may be part of the issue, that it was given to us in hard copy. We did not get them electronically.
I didn't get them electronically either. No. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Jeremy Fabrell. I am a resident of Monroe Township since 2017. I have young children just entering the school system now. I have a 6-year-old Aiden in the Mill Lake School, and overall, we are very proud residents of Monroe. We love everything that's, most things that are going on in the town, and thank you all for all the work that you do. My concern as a parent has to do with the food options given to the children. I have a 6-year-old who is a picky eater, like most 6-year-olds are. We allow him to indulge. However, in school, where it's supposed to be a nourishing environment, things like Fritos and potato chips and Pop-Tarts and Rice Krispies treats and Scooby-Doo snacks, and the list goes on. I personally don't feel that this is nourishing and appropriate food for a 6-year-old in an environment where they should be thriving, and it is not nutritional stuff that I believe helps children thrive. How are these decisions made, and what can be done to provide better food choices for our children?
Mrs. Chandler?
Sure. If I may, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, are those items that are provided like during class, or you're saying those are the items that are provided on the lunch line? She's
At
shaking her head,
lunchtime.
yes, because lunchtime. So I thank you, and what you have, it's really very simple. What I can do is literally call, I will send an email to Ms. Schaller, who I actually met with this week, Cindy Sue Schaller, who happens to be our Director of Food Service, and I can easily have that conversation with her. I am aware that we have to follow New Jersey state requirements as far as ingredients and the main meal. I can also have a conversation with her that if these are the add-ons or the a la carte snacks, are these the only snacks that are offered? Are we offering apple slices or strawberries or various different things? And I'm going to also say, do we limit what a child can take? So for example, if we have food choices, because I agree, a 6-year-old is going to see these things, and if there's options for healthier choices here and not as healthy choice here, and there is no confinement to say you may take one and you may take one, but you may not take both from column B, no one's saying that that child is taking both from column B, and I agree with that. So that is not a problem at all. I would be happy to do that, and you're welcome to reach out to me if you want. You're welcome to either email me or even give me a day or two to meet with her to set it up, and you're welcome, if you want to call me, I'll be happy to call you back.
Thank you.
Have that conversation. My pleasure.
Thank you. And there is an option that parents do have that you can set limits on the lunch account if you don't want your child to buy a snack. Just putting that out there. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but that is something that parents should know, that if they're uncomfortable with a child buying 2 or 3 snacks, each day, that they can put something onto the lunch account to make a note that a student cannot purchase more than, say, one snack.
Okay, so it's a note that would come up at the cash register,
yes.
and so it's not a monetary limit, it's a item limit?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah Aziz, I live in Monroe Township. In February 2021, during the middle school Teen Truth Zoom presentation, somebody superimposed a Nazi symbol on the face of a student of the Sikh religion and annotated it with a racial slur. Given that this incident was publicized and widely discussed, naturally it was hurtful and upsetting to our Sikh students and their families throughout the district. Yet, at the last policy meeting, it appeared that the board thought it was odd that Sikh parents of students who were not on the Zoom call filed a harassment, intimidation, and bullying complaint regarding this incident. It also seemed that though the purpose of the meeting was to reduce the number of incidents classified as HIB under the false premise that all incidents of harassment, intimidation, and bullying must be motivated by an obvious, quote-unquote, distinguishing characteristic. However, the law makes it clear that such incidents can be motivated by both an actual or a perceived characteristic, such as race, color, religion, ancestry, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, or a mental, physical, or sensory disability, or by any other distinguishing characteristic. The presumption that there needs to be an obvious distinguishing characteristic prior to an actual investigation inhibits an investigation, as does the presumption that a distinguishing characteristic has to be skin color alone. We are left with a poor and narrow interpretation of a law that was purposefully meant to account for a wide spectrum of harmful behaviors that students may inflict on others. After the school district's investigation into this particular anti-Sikh bias incident was completed over a year ago, in May 2021, the district was unable to identify the offender. However, the district did make changes to procedures related to virtual presentations to protect against these attacks. The district also agreed to offer appropriate cultural awareness and diversity training for staff, students, and the community. As an action step in their strategic action plan, the district also planned to perform a diversity audit and create a diversity council to engage the students, staff, and community members to help guide the district in the diversity awareness work. Was a diversity council ever created? Again, this report was completed 18 months ago. If so, who serves on the diversity council? What were the results of the diversity audit? I don't recall any of these things being discussed at committee meetings or at BOE meetings after the bias incident occurred. So where is the follow-up? Furthermore, I just out of curiosity, I checked the meeting minutes of the East Brunswick Board of Education, and I noticed that their monthly meeting minutes actually has a monthly HIB report in their official minutes, which lists how many HIB incidents there were, what factor motivated them, was it race or religion? It doesn't list the names of the students involved, but it tells you how many incidents there were and what the outcome was. So other districts have a lot of transparency as to the number of HIBs that are occurring in their district. And I was wondering if this district would be interested in promoting that kind of transparency, and again, the follow-up regarding that Zoom incident.
Thank you. Your characterization of what went on at the policy meeting could not be further from the truth. What you've put out on social media about myself and about Mrs. Chanley is incorrect and is quite divisive to the community, and it does not reflect at all what took place at the policy meeting. We had an open discussion about HIB, and yes, I did make mention of the incident as an example of the instances of how things come before the board, sometimes without a perpetrator, sometimes we get HIBs where the students were not affected, or it was an example that I was using as to some of the indiscrepancies in the law that we see as board members. You don't hear the HIBs, we do, so you don't know what we're discussing at a high level. and we cannot discuss the details behind that. So when we're having a discussion in the policy committee about things that we've heard, we cannot discuss all of those details. But to come out and put on social media about people being racist and biased and not wanting to stand up for the rights of the children in our district, it's not true. And it really needs to end. The
I didn't call anybody
characterization-
racist, but the video itself speaks for itself. So
And-
we can
and
agree to
exactly, you-
disagree about what went on in that video. However, my question still remains about the follow-up regarding the May 2021 results of the investigation. Was there a diversity council created? What was it? Was there a diversity audit? What was the follow-through regarding that particular incident?
I'm sorry, what diversity council?
After that Zoom incident, which I believe is an incident of harassment, intimidation, and bullying, Dr. Albert produced a report that said that the district would create a diversity council. And I don't know of any diversity council that was created based on that letter.
Thank you. Dr. Lehman, would you like to discuss
I think I
that?
can fill in some of the blanks. Again, the previous superintendent was leading that process. So we worked with the Sikh Coalition during and after the incident. Several administrators, the superintendent and myself met with them to work through strategies and support the Sikh population in our township. We met with parents, we met with representatives from our local community in terms of anyone who was impacted by that incident. While we were developing the strategic plan, the beginning of the strategic plan, we were getting quotes and information from some vendors, one of which we're actually utilizing for the mental health support, the grant-related piece, to do some additional work, whether it was, one of the ideas was a diversity audit. They would take a look at our programs, our curricula, really like a random sampling of it, and just kind of take a look at the books we're reading and things, and do they represent or do they have a sampling of our current population in the township. Involved in that is also professional development for the administrative team, professional development for some of the staff, and then turnkeying it to the staff. It was a relatively significant financial piece, and not something, by the time we were in that process, did we have the ability to cover with a grant. The grant was mental health related, which is why we ended up going with the mental health side of things instead of the diversity side. It's something that it's in our strategic plan. It's something that's on my radar. But it's something that we need to financially prepare for, because it's bigger than just bringing 8 or 10 adults from the community together to have a conversation. This would be a comprehensive look at us as an organization, as a community, and start discussing things about us as a group. And do we represent ourselves? Do we meet the needs of the diverse population of our students? And I'm looking at Ms. Bora because she spoke about some of the things she attended in New Jersey school boards, and I can probably read her mind about what she's thinking about, because that's a lot of the work that I see and a lot of the work we see when we interact with other districts, because we're all in different stages. Right now, we are managing a mental health piece. Some other districts prioritized a diversity issue that was bubbling up in their township. So we can't do everything all at the same time. So we're pulled in many directions. We were heading down the diversity piece. We got in a good place in terms of protecting ourselves from incidents like that happening again, security-wise. But we do have to do some work on the diversity side of things, in terms of a curriculum audit, in terms of just the way our staff, myself, all of us included, interact with each other, and how we manage and understand and learn various cultures and things. So that is something that we have in the forefront of us, but it's the Diversity Council, in quotes, was not created because that was a part of this process that we were working on with this company that we ended up having the mental health side that work on instead. They were going to do a diversity council that would be representative of the community, as well as us as a school. They would lead the charge as a community group with the guidance of these professionals to kind of take a look at everything. And part of that was the diversity audit of our programs in schools and curricula. So that's where that came from. It's something that we need to do. whether it's this company or another company. And again, the mental health side of things, it's the big company. Whether they know it or not, their interactions and their engagement with us with the mental health piece will influence whether we kind of go down the road with them or consider someone else on the diversity piece too, because they are one company. This is almost like an interview for them. It would be different professionals and things, but that's kind of where we're heading. It's not to say it's not going to happen, but it's the timing and the way things happened, and we had other bubbling needs coming through COVID that we just had to kind of rearrange.
So there's no deadline or timeline or anything?
Thank you.
No.
Your time is up. And I just want to make mention of one thing that was, that you were reporting, that this board was trying to, in some way, in some fashion, lessen HIB and try to reduce what we were holding accountable and not accountable. And I would like to say on behalf of the Board of Education, that simply is not true. This board takes harassment, intimidation, bullying claims that come before us very seriously. The discussion in policy was also about code of conduct, and when it doesn't meet a harassment, intimidation, bullying threshold, how it does in the code of conduct and how it is handled that way. I know we cannot discuss the HIBs that come before us. However, the board does have very extensive conversations when we are in closed session, and a lot of that conversation does reflect around not only how do we help, support, and give guidance to the students who are harassed or intimidated or bullied, but also the person that may have made a bad choice and brought that action forward, because it's about all of our students' needs. And if somebody has made a bad choice or somebody is struggling and they are harassing a student, there may be an underlying reason why they are. So not only do we look at every child, and we make sure that we are looking at all of social, emotional issues for everybody. So to say that this board is trying to get away with implementing the HIB laws just is not true. And, you know, I take great offense to that, because I know this board takes a lot of time, and the administration and our HIB coordinators, our administrators, our counselors take a lot of time on these that come before them. So, you know, to say that the board is looking to do something to not help our students simply is not true.
Can I just make a comment too?
Yes.
I just want to contribute to what you're saying. I believe, from my understanding, because there was a session on it at the SBA convention, they've reviewed the HIB law, and these are recommendations from Strauss Esme that make changes. We've discussed this at our board meeting in Jamesburg, that basically what should be considered code of conduct and what should be considered HIB. And since this law was put in place, there have been many cases that they're being deemed as HIB that might not necessarily be HIB. And these are things that stay on a child's record that follow them all through their school years that could potentially, you know, I know we've had students in Jamesburg where this could have potentially affected them getting into military school or, you know, something very important. So it is something that I think as board members we take very seriously. And, you know, deeming something as an HIB, I mean, you're putting a very extreme mark on that child's record. And that's why they've done these revisions to this policy, so that there is a little bit more flexibility, and it's not just so black and white as to this is HIB and this is not HIB. And I don't know if, again, I'm a new board member here in Monroe, so I don't know if you guys do this every year, but we in Monroe, in Jamesburg every year, we do an annual HIB assessment that the superintendent presents to us. So I'm sure that's probably state policy. So again, that's something that we go over as a board, and just to kind of reinforce that. It's not this board trying to minimize it. This is something that the state is doing.
Yes.
And that we're all kind of reviewing as board members as to what's HIB and what is code of conduct.
Yes, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Elisa Franey. I'm a paraprofessional at the high school. Sorry, I'm tall. I love my job, and I appreciate everything that you guys are doing for our kids. I am very happy to hear that you're taking your time with the health curriculum, because that's very important to us. As our disabilities, you know, our kids with disabilities also They are now getting the health program. I know some of us were concerned about that as far as what they would be teaching them. I think we have the guidelines now, pretty much what, it's not going to be as much as the gen ed kids are going to be receiving. I'm concerned for our gen ed kids. I'm concerned for our kids in our class and the MD class also. But I'd rather have you take the same type of approach with our special needs as to our gen ed kids when you make your decision. I'm hoping that you'll take that into consideration because it's near and dear to my heart, not just our kids with disabilities, but all of our kids. All of our gen ed kids need to know that we're protecting them, we're protecting their rights, and we're protecting them from things that are beyond maybe what they can comprehend. I know it's out there. It's out there in social media. It's out there in all the different types of media. But unfortunately, I know that they're going to find out about this, but do they have to find out about this within our school system? Is it our right to do that, or is it our parents' right? So basically, I'd hope that you really think about that when you make your decision. It's important to me. My children are grown, thank the Lord. But you know what? I do feel for the next generation coming up because they are our generation. They're going to take care of you and I. So please, think about that.
Thank
That's
you.
all. Thank you.
Is there anybody else wishing to speak? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public forum. Our next item on our agenda is our closed session resolution. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Township of Monroe hereby moves into closed session in accordance with the Sunshine Law, Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, NJSA 10:4-6 through 10:4-21, to discuss the following subjects: harassment, intimidation, and bullying, matters protected by attorney-client privilege. Following closed session, action may be taken. The discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public at such time as the need for confidentiality no longer exists. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we also need to appoint a temporary board
Make a motion to
secretary.
appoint Karen
I
Bierman.
second that.
All those in favor? Aye.
I third.
All right, thank you. I would anticipate probably 30 to 45 minutes for closed session. Okay, we're back in the public session. We have a resolution Mrs. Belko is going to read.
It is recommended that the members of the Monroe Township Board of Education authorize and direct the President of the Board of Education to file as the complainant a School Ethics Act as discussed in executive session, and authorize David Rubin to represent the board president in the aforementioned matter based on his current rate structure with the board. The board president, the superintendent of schools, and the board council hereby are authorized and directed to take all necessary and appropriate steps to implement this action of the board.
So move.
Second.
Okay, may we have a roll call, please, Mrs. Tagliaferra?
Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Ms. Bora?
Abstain.
Ms. Belko?
Yes.
Mr. Nicotinsky?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Ms. Ratner?
Recuse.
Ms. Arminio?
No.
Ms. Bierman?
Yes.
Ms. Skirby?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay. Our next item on the agenda is a public forum for closed session items only. Is there anybody from the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll close the public forum. The next scheduled Board of Education meeting is December 14th, 2022. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, and have a wonderful night, and happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.